I call to order the meeting of the Newport City Council regular session, Monday, October 3rd, 2022. Roll call, please, Eric.
Kaplan? Here. Pateo? Here. Goebel?
Here.
Jacoby?
Here.
Hall?
Here.
Parker?
Here.
Sawyer?
Here.
Hey. Welcome, Mayor Sawyer.
Hello from Bend.
Will you all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I'm not going to stand. And I'm not going to say under God.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is now time for public comment. This is a time for anyone who would like to speak on anything not included on our regular agenda.
3 minutes.
For up to 3 minutes. I have Araceli Guevara and Jerry Robbins, if you'd like to come forward. Yes, and if you can please just state your name and the town where you reside.
Thank you. Araceli Guevara, Newport. I'm sorry. So this is a responding to 2 months ago about the Ocean View Drive problem where our mail got suspended due to the dangerous intersection on 17th Street on Ocean View Drive. So my comment is this: I hope you got the letter already in your hands. So now that you have the letter from the Newport Postmaster explaining the main reason why our temporary suspension of mail delivery are a block, the safety implies prevention of vehicle collision and possibly bodily injuries. We hope that you could understand how stressful and challenging has been for a neighborhood of 12 homes for the last 4 years trying to merge on Ocean View Drive at 17th Street intersection. 16th Street and 18th Street on Ocean View Drive involves a major blind curve. This section has become a danger zone due to the increased speed in drivers. How much longer do we have to suffer? How much longer do we have to wait for a solution? How much stress do we have to keep enduring? We have children, school buses, pedestrians, pets, wild animals trying to cross this intersection. The noise of traffic is constant, not to mention the CO2 pollution. We understand that the City Council cannot control speeding drivers, but we believe there's got to be a way to force them to slow down. For almost 3 miles, starting at Agate Beach entrance at at Highway 101, all the way to Nana's Irish Spot corner, there's not a single sign, there's not a single stop sign. So this makes Ocean View an ideal road to avoid Highway 101. The flashing light sign on 13th Street on Ocean View Drive is well-intended and is a well-intended improvement. However, drivers are not obeying the speed limit. At this location, we have been passed several times on a double yellow line by cars driving too fast. So we are begging for the council to please advocate for our neighborhood of 12 homes to find a solution to make 17th Street intersection a safe place for the entire neighborhood. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming to talk to us. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention to this matter. Anyway.
Thank you. Our other public comment is from Christy Farrell. It was not asked to be read into the record, but it is in our packet.
Hey Spencer, can you say a quick blurb about the RFP for traffic engineering on Ocean View and what the timeline is on potential consideration of options from the RFP?
Yeah, as was reported to the council, I think, 2 meetings ago, we did issue an RFP to have a traffic engineer come in to determine what alternatives we have for dealing with the traffic concerns that have been expressed in this particular neighborhood. That RFP, I don't know if Aaron's here tonight, but I know that they should be due if they haven't been received already, and I don't know what the status of that is, but we will certainly let the council know at the next meeting what the status is of selecting a traffic engineer to take a look at some of the alternatives. Again, one of the real challenges with traffic is we don't want to create hazards in trying to resolve other hazards, and that's always the challenge, because intersections, stop intersections, do oftentimes create more accidents than were there before, and so we need to look at that to determine what we can do to try to address those issues. And as we indicated, we've done a fairly extensive amount of work that to try to address these issues. Obviously, this particular neighborhood is in a real challenging spot. The way the road was designed years ago and the way it's developed around that location has, it's not a real desirable situation. And so, anyway, I can give a report on timing of the next steps with that traffic study at our next meeting.
Thank you.
We have another order of business right now. Sorry. Yeah. Our next order of business is a proclamation.
Are we going to
Fire
read
Chief,
this letter? Are we going to read this letter out loud? That
The
public?
proclamation?
No, she didn't ask. She didn't ask for it to be read. She just wanted it to be
No, she did
made
not.
available to the council.
Nope. This is the next order of delightful business. Good evening again. A proclamation of the City of Newport recognizing National Fire Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Newport is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting our state. Whereas home fires caused 2,580 civilian deaths in the United States in 2020, according to the National Fire Prevention Association. And fire departments in the United States responded to 356,500 home fires. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires in half, and whereas Newport residents should be sure everyone in the home understands the sounds of the smoke alarms and how to respond. And whereas Newport residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas Newport residents will make sure their smoke and carbon monoxide alarms meet the needs of all their family members, including those with sensory or physical disabilities. And whereas the Newport Fire Department first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2022 Fire Prevention Week theme, quote, "Fire won't wait, plan your escape," unquote, effectively serves to remind people it is important to have a home fire escape plan. And therefore, I, Cynthia Jacoby, Council President of the City of Newport, do proclaim October 9 through 15, 2022 as Fire Prevention Week, and I urge all the people of Newport to plan and practice a home fire escape for Fire Prevention Week and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Newport Fire Department. Congratulations on your public relations with the community, and I hope everyone understands and takes the advice. Here's the proclamation. Thank you. I asked for a promotion, a motion, yes, to approve the consent calendar. Eric?
The consent calendar consists of the following items: the approval of the minutes of the work session of September 19th, 2022, the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of September 19th, 2022, ratification of the mayor's appointment of Chassie Davidson to the Public Arts Committee for a term expiring December 31st, 2023, ratification of the mayor's reappointment of Josh Conrad to the Vision 2040 Advisory Committee for a term expiring December 31, 2026, ratification of the mayor's appointments of Charles Brown and Nyla Jebusek to the Parks and Recreation Committee for terms expiring on December 31st, 2023, receipt of the monthly financial reports, and receipt of approved committee meeting minutes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to accept the consent calendar as listed for Monday, October 3rd, 2022.
Second.
Okay.
Jan.
Motion was made by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Hall. Kaplan, seconded by Counselor Kaplan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Are there any of the committee appointees in the office, in the council chamber, excuse me? I see Chassie Davidson is here. And Frances Van Wert from Public Arts Committee. Would you like to come up and take a seat and introduce yourselves? Come on up. Can just state your name and the city where you reside.
Chassie Davidson, Newport.
Frances Van Wert, Newport. I would like to introduce Chassie Davidson to you as a newly selected member of the city's Public Art Committee. She has been a well-known artist in the Toledo-Newport area for many, many years and actively involved in promoting art in Lincoln County. She was recently accepted to replace Tom Webb at the VAC. The Public Arts Committee is pleased to have Chassie join our team.
Welcome, Chassie.
Thank you.
I understand you had a successful weekend at the Visual Arts Center. Would you like to say a word about it?
We have a show up that two shows that just went up that will be up until the last week of November in the Runyon Gallery, which just got an upgrade. The walls were just repainted and it's looking very nice there. A show by Darren Orange from Astoria called Fractal Inner Space, and in our COVID showcase on the middle level, we have Karen Fitzgibbon from Toledo with Mixed Media.
Okay, great. Well, I thank you both for serving on the Public Arts Committee and everyone else who serves on committees. You have our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, let's see. Our next order of business is number 6, our public hearing. Eric, will you read the first piece here?
This is a public hearing, and this is a public hearing and potential adoption of ordinance number 2200 related to trespassing.
Spencer?
On August 15th, the City Council adopted ordinance number 2195, which formalized the city's process regarding exclusions and criminal trespasses relating to public places. As part of a subsequent review of the ordinance, there were a number of adjustments that were proposed to be made to clarify the provisions. These are outlined in the red line version attached for your review. The amendments do not fundamentally change the practice the city has utilized for exclusions or criminal trespasses from public places for a number of years. At this point, I would recommend the City Council President conduct a public hearing on ordinance number 2200 and ordinance amending certain sections, Chapter 8.11 of the Newport Code related to exclusions and criminal trespass in public places.
Okay. I hereby open the public hearing. Do we have any public comments?
For trespassing? Yeah, okay,
Can-
You just have to sit down and the microphone's already on, but just
I was told
introduce
that I
yourself.
stand up for the judge, you know what I mean, or whatever, but.
We're not judging you.
Out of respect.
Yeah.
But
No,
anyways,
you can
I
just
don't know.
state your name and where you reside,
My
please.
name's Rocky Donovan Gonzalez, and I reside, Siletz Reservation, the rest. But, anyways, the way I see it is there's been always, you know, a hardship in life, you know, for everybody. So, I mean, I see tents outside of city halls and places, and every place I go, or every place we see that's hardship. The main thing is like, that is City Hall. You know, that's a place where you're supposed to be safe. You know, or, you know, you know, we should be protected by all means. You know what I mean? I understand that people don't pick up after themselves like they used to. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe they weren't, you know, in that right demeanor, I guess. Or raised right, I guess. You know what I mean? I don't know. Open a door for every lady, you know, or say thank you for what you get, you know, and, you know, be thankful for what we have, you know, and some people don't have that. So that's all I'm saying is being trespassed off of a place to where we are, you know, originate, or maybe we're born, you know, in that community. It should be something done about that to where it ain't, you know, like that for the community. That's all I'm saying, no matter what community you come from, but we're talking about here too, you know, so that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Is there a Dorothy Handley here? Dorothy? Yep. Come up and state your name and your residence, please.
Dorothy Hanley, Newport.
Thank you.
So I heard in the proclamation that the city council is committed to the safety of all residents in Newport. Now, though I do not prefer to have homeless people living directly across from my house, I don't feel safe in that matter, but also in that proclamation, what really stuck out to me was that first sentence. And it says all residents. Are not the homeless people residents too? So I'm asking the council, and I don't need no answer right now. I'm just asking you to please think about this. As far as I know, as of today, I've lived in this town for 1 month, my husband and I. And I've been asking questions, I've been reading stuff, and I don't see where there's a lot of help for the homeless. Whether they're elderly, there's an elderly lady, 70 years old, across the street almost from my house right now, who isn't quite right. And my heart just, it's saddened for her that there's nothing here. Why does the city not have something for the elderly and for the homeless that really need help? I said before at the last meeting that it does come down to the 3 or 4 C's in life, you know, your choices, your courage, your chances, all that. For the ones that do want to do that, that are homeless, we have nothing hardly to offer them. And that breaks my heart. How is that? When in that proclamation it says that Newport City cares about all residents. Now, they may not have a home structure that is built on a foundation, but what they do have is all they have. And they are, as far as I'm concerned, they're part of the community. And we need to do something as a community to help them. That's all I have.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other comments from the public on this topic? Hearing none, I will close the public meeting. And I will ask for a motion to approve.
I just didn't know if the police chief wanted to say anything about the ordinance, or?
Yeah, I think we're supposed to have a voice vote, and then you have discussion.
No.
So,
We'll have the
so
discussion first.
at this point, you could have a motion or you could have discussion, whatever,
Whichever one. I have
whatever
2 A's
council
here.
wants to do, yeah.
If you'd like to have a discussion, go ahead. Counselor Parker?
I was just going to ask the chief if he wanted to say anything, and it seems like he isn't going to.
So let me jump in. So the chief and I talked about this earlier, and I'll give an overview of why this ordinance is in front of us tonight. So as you know, back in August, we actually, the council adopted the exclusion ordinance, and that took effect on September 14th. And that was patterned after a policy that had been an internal policy since 2012 that our former city manager had put in place. But as you remember, back in August, we wanted to formalize it through an ordinance to make sure it had more, I guess, teeth to it, and it had more of a, it was a code provision rather than just an internal policy. So the reason we have this ordinance tonight is it's more cleanup ordinance, meaning there were some provisions in there that I took another look at, along with some other staff, and we realized there's some wording in there that needed to be kind of more of technical nature that needed to be revised. So I can go through it very generally just to let you know the reason why we have this ordinance in front of us tonight. Basically, we just want to make sure that the definitions in the exclusion ordinance matched the definitions that are going to be in the camping ordinance, which you'll be considering later on this evening. We wanted to make sure that things were matching so we don't have inconsistent definitions. So you'll see in that first section of the ordinance, we're basically kind of revising the definitions to make sure everything matches. The next section has to do with just cleaning up the language to kind of make it clear that if someone is on City Hall or other property, and we're not just talking about camping, this is anything related to a person's presence on property, that we want to make sure the language was clear, that we weren't going to be violating anyone's First Amendment rights. So the cleanup in Section 2 was basically an acknowledgement that people have First Amendment rights to say and do certain things, and we didn't want to infringe on that. So that was why we cleaned up the language in Section 2 of the ordinance to conform to the First Amendment protections. And there were some other changes that just basically had to do with what the statutes say as far as what's a felony or what's a misdemeanor, subject to either a 180-day exclusion or a 90-day exclusion, and that was in Section 3. And finally, in Section 4, again, we wanted to make sure it was clear that even if someone's excluded from city property, for instance, City Hall, they can ask for a waiver from the city manager to conduct business, but if someone is excluded from property and they have a legitimate reason to be on property for, they want to pay a water bill, the fact they've been excluded does not mean it means they can still have the right to come and pay their water bill. They're not excluded, especially if they want to conduct legitimate business. So we want to put that language in Section 4 to make it clear exclusion did not mean you still cannot be on property to conduct legitimate city business. So these were more clarification issues rather than changing anything substantively. And I think it makes it a cleaner, more efficient, and more of an objective ordinance that will be utilizing. And I think the police chief would probably agree with that. If he wants to say a few words, that's fine, but he wanted me to speak to these specific changes before you had a further discussion on this.
Okay. Council, any other discussion on this? Closer.
Am I on?
Now it is. Sorry.
There you go.
I'm generally in favor of this. I think we need to move forward and have some clear rules, and I think that that's the intent. In terms of Ms. Handley's comments, I think we need a commitment from, as a council, to that. One, we've got to clean up some things, and the other thing is we really need to be focused on what do we do, what are the solutions, what are things we can do, and we are participating on a homeless task force that with the other cities and the county at this point to try to come up with solutions. It's not an overnight, and it's. I'm sorry that we don't have that now, but I don't think we can leave no rules in place and just have chaos. So, just wanted to say that.
Cynthia? One thing I did want to mention, and this will also be something that the council will consider in the camping ordinance, which is Ordinance 2198. There's a provision in the whereas clause of this ordinance and also in the last section that, in which the ordinance takes effect immediately. Typically, as you know, when you adopt an ordinance, it's 30 days out. But since this is amending an ordinance that's already in effect, we want to make sure these amendments are clearly in effect immediately because these are cleanup provisions. We don't want to wait 30 days for these to take effect. So you'll see that in the ordinance as well.
Okay, yeah. Counselor Goebel?
It is not my intent to exclude anybody from city council, but there are times when a person's conduct and behavior is required to be excluded. So I'll read some of the things in our rules of conduct that is in the ordinance that might be enlightening for people. So no person shall violate any federal, state, or city of Newport laws or ordinances. No person shall enter or remain on any city property for purpose other than to conduct legitimate business with the city or to use the property lawfully under the laws and rules that apply. No person shall enter or attempt to enter any secure portion of the city property that is not open to members of the public without authorization from the city manager or a designee. No person shall deface, damage, or destroy city property. No person shall engage in conduct that degrades the appearance of city property, including but not limited to disposing trash or defacing property. No person shall engage in conduct that disrupts or interferes with the operation of the city government or disturbs city customers or employees, including but not limited to conduct that creates unreasonable noise and physical behavior. No person shall engage in conduct that subjects customers or employees of the city government to alarm, including but not limited to conduct that involves the use of abusive or threatening language or gestures. Unless specifically authorized, no person shall use a public space for the purpose of housing or camping, including but not limited to placing objects such as vehicles, bicycles, backpacks, carts, or other items in a manner that interferes with passage. No person shall refuse to obey any law, direction of the city government employee. No person shall violate any provisions posted on any city parking facility. Those are really the items where I think if people behave that way or do that, then it's cause to exclude them from city property. So that's what we're talking about.
Cynthia?
Any other discussion? David?
Just to clarify, Councilor Goebel, so a couple of those items that you referenced are actually being amended tonight. If you look at Section 2 of Ordinance 2200, we've actually cleaned up the language in a couple of those sections to actually conform to more First Amendment protections. But the gist of what you said is currently what's in the ordinance, and we're making some minor technical adjustments, as you'll see in Section 2 of the ordinance.
I saw that, yeah.
Oh. Okay. Is that gone? Is that good? Okay. Just real clear to get on the record. So if you take a look at Section 2 of the ordinance, you'll see that a couple of the items you read into the record have actually been clarified and cleaned up to conform with First Amendment protections. But the gist of what you said are the rules of conduct that are in the current ordinance, which will pretty much stay intact if you adopt this ordinance tonight.
Yeah, okay, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Counselor Boteo?
I have a question, a follow-up question on disturbance. Can you give me some reference what it means disturbance?
I think that's the question I'm going to ask the police chief to come up with, because he deals with this more. I'm pressing the wrong button here. So I'm going to ask the police chief to come up because those are the kind of issues that he is more informed of, because these are the kind of the language that he has to deal with all the time as far as implementation from a law enforcement perspective.
So most of the time, the disturbance reference is going to be somebody that actively engages in a disturbance and commits the crime of disorderly conduct. Just because somebody may be loud or boisterous may not be a crime, because it may be First Amendment activities. But if that conduct goes too far, starts causing alarm, threatening others, tumultuous behavior, things like that, and the crime of disorderly conduct occurs on city property, then they may be subject to exclusion.
Yeah, I think the other important thing to note, probably the location where this is, and we haven't had many people excluded from activities in the 9 years I've been here, but probably most of it has been at the recreation center where people get into altercations And there's a cooling off period in which this is done. And I believe the vast majority of them that have happened have been at the rec center.
Is it about pickleball? Just kidding.
Pickleball is a very, very spirited
It's
sport.
a heated
so.
sport.
Yeah. Mayor Sawyer, did you have anything you'd like to say? Have you had your hand up? Nope. Nope. Okay.
I just have a quick question on section 2G, the form, just the form of the word disturbance. Should it be that word disturbance?
Yes.
How does that, can you read that aloud, how it sounds? Because it doesn't read right in my head.
No person shall engage in conduct that subjects customers or employees of the city government to alarm or disturbance. And again, the word disturbance is there because it relates more to the conduct that the police chief just indicated. So it might not read well and it might sound a little bit awkward, but it's not necessarily about that. It's about the actual language that's being utilized and the language that can be implemented and dealt with objectively by law enforcement. And I think disturbance is the best word because, as the police chief said, that's linked to other conduct that he's and the police officers are familiar with dealing with. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, well said.
So,
Okay. One more comment from Councilor Goebel.
so I read all those items off, but that ordinance is already in place, that's what I read off. So the only thing that we're really looking at tonight is the modifications that were made, which is the word that was taken out and language is shown. Three items that we're considering that really talk to First Amendment rights, right?
Well, you'll see in sections 1, section 2, and section 3 and section 4, I want to make it easy for one, so I basically put everything in red font that was either going to be deleted or added. So you'll see the language that's going to be deleted has been crossed through, and if it's being added, it's underlined, and that will then be the changes, very minimal, technical in nature, that will be added to the ordinance that you adopted in August, which is the larger 7-page document. So really, it's just a few minor word changes in some of the sections of the ordinance. The gist of the ordinance, the basis for having this ordinance is not being changed at all.
Even though we do have this ordinance in place, Spencer, you did say over the last 9 years you had how many cases that were excluded from City Hall?
Yeah. Do you know, Jason, what the numbers would be?
It's very few from actual city facilities. It's generally for conduct that's occurring on city property. Most of them are occurring, well, there's quite a few actually at the library. And then the rec center ones have been directly related to assaults, fights, actually physical contact. A lot of the things we get are for drinking in public, on public benches, on the boardwalk, things like that. The majority of them are for that type of conduct in public, not necessarily on facilities.
And whose discretion is it that to exclude? Is that the city manager?
It's the police officer or the staff person that witnesses the conduct.
Okay. And that person will then get a formal exclusion letter or some kind of a...
They get what looks like a citation. Is a written exclusion. It explains all of their rights. People have the right to have a hearing to challenge the exclusion, and which is then sent to our municipal court. I think in the history of the 10 years that I've been involved with these, one has requested a hearing.
And then what if a person is trespassed, what happens? Do they come back and trespass again? Do they get arrested or what happens?
They are subject to arrest for criminal trespass in the 2nd degree.
Okay. And then they could end up in jail or what?
They could. It's a C misdemeanor, so it's punishable by up to 30 days in jail and then a fine.
Okay. That would be true for, now we're talking about all city property, parks and rec parks and everything else, Spencer? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, this is covering all city facilities, the library, the rec center, City Hall, covers, basically all our public facilities.
And there are some people that, if, say, for example, their conduct was warranted an exclusion from the rec center, it's generally from the rec center. It may not be from every piece of city property. It's for the conduct that they engage there. Like Spencer had mentioned, that cooling off period for whatever the conduct was at the rec center.
So the trespass is specific to a place then?
It could be. So again, it's difficult to put out all of the scenarios. The officer at the time has the discretion, or the staff member has the time at the discretion. You know, was their act so egregious it needs to be from all city facilities? Most of the time it's difficult when it's a park, because then it's generally all parks, but then that doesn't include City Hall, the rec center, library, things like that. If their conduct was at City Hall that was so egregious that they warranted a trespass, they could still go to the library, could still go to the rec center.
Okay, that's good to know, yeah. So that's at your discretion then?
Generally, yes. Not mine, the person issuing it.
Yeah, no, I understand, but.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Any other comments or questions, council? Okay.
So I do have a question.
Counselor Hall?
The ordinance 2195 being in place already did have the provision that said no person shall use a public place for the purpose of housing or camping. And we have heard a lot this week from folks about the folks camped out on the City Hall property. And so what is different about tonight that was not in here, that is not specifically stated? Because I'm not clear on that, because it's already in here. So can you help me understand what is different about that?
So really the only different, I don't think there is a change in that for the, I don't have it in front of me. David could tell me. I don't think there's any change in that no person shall camp. There's no update to that language.
No, there's no update to that. Basically, the language that we'd be looking at under the exclusion ordinance for rules of conduct is no person shall violate any federal, state, or city of Newport law or ordinance. So when the camping ordinance takes effect, if it takes effect tonight, then if they're camping in an area that's not allowed, then they'll be violating a city ordinance, which then kicks in or ties to the exclusion ordinance. So these basically go hand in hand in that the exclusion ordinance you adopted back in August is really more of a general ordinance that's been utilized for the past 10 years. Camping has never really been in the mix necessarily, but now with these
But it
new...
is on this ordinance.
Yeah, but remember,
No,
camping
no.
ordinance is not
No,
constitutional.
no,
Our
yeah,
current camping
right.
ordinance is not constitutional.
I understand that. I'm just saying okay, fair, okay.
Right. So
Okay.
right now, if we adopt the camping ordinance tonight, that will then tie into the exclusion ordinance, because if someone's camping in an area that's prohibited, they'd be violating a city ordinance, which then would tie into the exclusion ordinance. So they go hand in hand, and you have to look at both of them in conjunction with one another to see how it relates to camping.
And if I can add, somebody that violates such as that is camping in a prohibited area is subject to trespass, not guaranteed to be trespass.
Right.
So all of these are generally last-ditch efforts after everything else has failed.
Counselor Goebel?
Yes, yeah, I read that item where it says that housing or camping included but not limited to places. There is a you can't camp on here, but it also says in the end of it that interferes with passage. So as long as they're camping, right now this ordinance allows camping as long as you don't interfere with passage of the people. So I think the camping ordinance we're going to look at tonight is a little bit different than that.
Okay. Are you ready to move? Oh, one more question? Okay.
Yeah, I have my last question. Because in B has been added or city managed, that means something like a new building that maybe in the future to buy, or there's like a city managed buildings that they have to be with this ordinance. I'm just trying to figure it out. That's the section 1B.
Yeah, I think the intent of that would be, again, if we had a facility that we were using for an event, for example, I believe that would potentially be a city-managed event. For example, when we're at the Armory for our night out, and we have that responsibility for that space. I think that it's that type of thing that would be intended there, because we don't lease it, we don't own it, but we're using it, and we have responsibility for the conduct within that facility.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Counselor Parker?
We'll go ahead and move to place for final passage and read by title only. ordinance number 2200, an ordinance amending certain sections in Chapter 8.11 of the Newport Municipal Code relating to exclusions and criminal trespass in public places.
Okay. I will now ask for a
You need-
voice
no,
vote.
You need a
Second.
support. Yep. Support for the motion.
Now there's a motion on the table now.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, we need support for the motion.
I second.
Is there a second? A
There's
second from
support.
Councilor
Yeah,
Kaplan.
Jan.
Okay.
Okay. It's been moved by Councilor Parker, seconded by Councilor Kaplan. I will now call for a voice vote on whether to adopt the ordinance. If the motion passes, the city recorder will read the ordinance by title only. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Let's have a roll call vote, please, Eric.
He needs to read the ordinance by title.
Okay, read the ordinance by title and then roll call vote.
This is ordinance number 2200, an ordinance amending certain sections in Chapter 8.11 of the Newport Municipal Code related to exclusions and criminal trespass in public places. Kaplan,
Aye.
Boteo,
Aye.
Goebel,
Aye.
Jacoby,
Aye.
Hall,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Sawyer.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries. We will now go on to 6B. Eric, please.
6B is a public hearing and potential adoption of ordinance number 2198, repealing and replacing Chapter 9.50 and amending Section 6.25.010 of the Newport Municipal Code related to camping.
Spencer?
The City Council has held public hearings on September 6th and September 19th to gain additional input on a draft camping ordinance to regulate camping within the City of Newport. As indicated previously, the city's existing ordinances are inoperable and need to be replaced to establish a framework to allow locations where camping within the city can and cannot occur. The ordinance also establishes various rules and procedures for the use of right-of-way and public properties throughout the city, including certain restricted areas. During the last meeting, there were a number of changes that were suggested at that meeting, and I'll run through those changes from the previous version of the ordinance that council discussed on September 19th, and staff has incorporated into this agreement. There is a amended section related to recreational vehicle parking to correct the cross-reference there, so that's kind of a technical change. It added a definition of personal property that aligns with the same definition contained in state law. It eliminated redundant and repetitive language, merging sections to kind of streamline the ordinance. Clarified language that relating to the revocation and permission to camp. Clarifying findings the city manager must make and provide for both notice and right to appeal. And the previous version did not include a cross-reference to the notice provision. This version includes a revision to clarify the prohibition of camping on publicly owned or maintained parking lots is limited to those that are under the city's jurisdiction. Another clarification was expanding the camping prohibition in public rights-of-way next to schools and daycare and child care facilities from 100 feet to 200 feet, and added facilities providing services to homeless persons as subject to the 200-foot spacing standard. It clarified that the measurement is to be taken from the edge of the lot or parcel upon which a school or facility is situated. This version also clarified that camping is prohibited within the public rights-of-way adjacent to a lot or parcel containing a dwelling, not just the dwelling itself. Deleted as redundant the prohibition of camping on Northeast 1st Street and Highway 101 to Northeast Benton Street and Northeast Avery Street. Again, with the 200-foot setbacks, that covers most of the areas where there were concerns expressed about that. And it clarifies a section relating to the removal, storage, and retrieval of personal property to note that weapons, drug paraphernalia, and items which reasonably appear to be either stolen or evidence of a crime may be retained and/or disposed of the police department in accordance with Trenton policies and procedures. Was agreed by the council at the September 19th meeting to add a immediate effect clause to this ordinance that would make it effective upon approval by the council. And so those are the changes that were made in the ordinance from the last version that was seen. I think the one thing, this has been a long and detailed process, but I think as we have gone through these various refinements of the ordinance, I think we are getting a fairer and better ordinance to try to address this situation. These are very challenging situations for all cities, and certainly including the city of Newport, to really determine what sorts of rules and regulations will protect the rights of property owners, as well as protect the rights of the folks that are homeless that need a place to stay and sleep. None of these solutions are perfect, but I think this provides a reasonable framework in which to help address the issue. As indicated in the last agenda item, we are having discussions on a county-wide basis about looking at larger solutions for more permanent ways of addressing certain aspects of homelessness within Lincoln County. The county has received a $1 million grant to help facilitate that process, and all the cities in Lincoln County, along with the county and the Sluts tribe, are participating in those discussions to try to make a difference in these issues to benefit those folks that are homeless in the community, particularly those that want to assistance and pull out of that cycle. At this point, I would recommend the council president conduct a public hearing on ordinance number 2198, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 9.50 and amending section 6.25.010 of the Newport Municipal Code relating to camping.
Okay. I will now open the public hearing. I have one comment. Blair Barbier.
Actually, I don't need to say anything.
Okay. Well, thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this issue? Please come up. You have 3 minutes.
Back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you. It's sort of been interesting coming back. And you guys have a tough job. You really do.
Name and city, please.
Oh, sorry. Marletta No, and I live in Newport.
Thank you.
And I have since 1966. And so my main concern is the fact that we've closed down mental institutions and dumped these people out on the street and left it to the police and the fire department and the jails and the prison to deal with these people. And I would like to see the city put as much energy into reopening hospitals and such for the mentally ill that need to be off the street and have clean beds. And I know they don't have to have a psychiatrist watching them 24/7, but they do need to be in a facility to avoid, like the one gentleman who pushed a woman out on the train tracks in New York. That's what I'm mostly afraid of, is the mentally ill causing harm to others. And that's what I would like the city of Newport to, and other facilities, other communities, to put their energy towards. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the issue of our camping ordinance? Come up and state your name. No, it's a public
It's
meeting.
an audio
Sorry.
issue. We just,
Yeah.
you're being recorded, and so we just need folks to be able to hear you.
Well, my name's Kim Leonard. I live here in Newport.
But go ahead and sit down so we can get you on the mic.
I'm getting ready to be, I'm evicted out of my apartment from housing, Lincoln County Housing, because I make too much money. Me and my son make too much money. They are not camping out here. They are trying to show you guys that they have nowhere to live. The rent here is outrageous. We can't qualify for anything. I'm going to be out on the streets. I'm 65 years old, and I'm going to be out on the streets in a matter of 13 days because we don't qualify, because we don't make 2.5% or 3% of whatever the rent is. The rent out here is outrageous. The minimum wage sucks. Something needs to be done. My son's one of the ones out here that's camping, and he has a job. And there's people that do work that have nowhere to go. And I don't really think you guys care at all. Something needs to be done, and it needs to be done soon, not 3 months down the road or a year down the road. I'd like to know what housing does with the money that they get funded to them, because they sure don't keep their apartments very decent. I'm very upset with this town, the city, the state, matter of fact. How do they expect people to live? Rents run a 2-bedroom, a little tiny 2-bedroom apartment. The lowest I have seen is $1,300 a month. That's ridiculous. That is crazy. And then you wonder why there's so many homeless people? That's why. And nothing's being done about it. So if you guys see me parked on your street in my car, me and my dog, that's because I have nowhere to go, because I don't qualify for anywhere else. And I will be parking on streets in front of somebody's house. Feel free to call the cops. I don't care.
Is there anyone else to address the issue?
I'm not quite sure, Dorothy Hanley, Newport. I'm not quite sure if this is going to come out the way that I'm thinking of it, but I will try. The way that I've heard, the way that I've read, and the things that I've seen is that the city of Newport is being allotted X amount of dollars here, X amount of dollars there, and here and there. And I'm just asking, one is, as a community, as a council or whoever is in charge of all of it, are we really looking at where that money is going to best benefit all the residents? Like I said earlier, the homeless are residents too. They may not have a direct address, they may be living in front of this building or that building, but they are residents too. And I really feel in my heart that as a community, we need to seriously start thinking and doing, not just thinking, but and doing something to put something in place. Buy an acre of land, buy an empty building and turn it into a shelter where if they comply with these rules and they do these things, then the city helps them get a job. They help them get into some housing, so on and so forth. That all happened for me when I was homeless and I lived in Portland. And it just breaks my heart that there's nothing here. Also, I'm curious as to about the school zone and the camping within the school zone, and what is that? Is that something we're really looking at? Because as adults, we can pretty much take care of ourselves, but there's children in that school zone. And I think that's something else that needs to be considered and thought about and talked about and something done about. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the issue?
DC Cloud of Newport, also the person that's organizing what's happening out front. Y'all keep telling us where we can't go, but we never hear where we can safely exist. In just a few days on your front lawn, we had 2 already known criminals of the community get into a violent altercation. Why do people like myself who volunteer and work for this community, who happen to live in a vehicle because of safety, because a person my size is not going to be in a nylon tent with addicts surrounding me and not being able to protect what I have? Where do I go to obey your laws, to exist in your society safely, and not keep being traumatized by being forced to live with savages. I mean, I hear all y'all and you keep calling it camping. Camping is a recreational sport. We're trying to survive, we're trying to live, and we're being put with what y'all have called numerous times throughout the little interview I've done with your newspaper, you're undesirable. And then poor Grace Wins gets bombarded with your police force dropping homeless at their door, and in the same breath, y'all yell at them for helping us. Or when Pac Weston comes and puts a disabled man on their steps, your business owner blows exhaust into their tent, harasses them. So able-bodied individuals like myself who want to contribute to your community can't, because we have to protect the people on First and Douglas. We have to be out here at City Hall feeding the people because there is no dinner. Grace Winds does what they can during the hours of operation, but when they're closed, who's feeding us? Who's helping us? Nobody. But we're able bodies. We're willing to work for that meal. We're willing to sweep up the streets. One of your maintenance men gave us a trash can. Every day that we've been out here this week, we have picked up this lawn, whether it has been our stuff or somebody else's. But no matter the damage done here in this community, the homeless is blamed. Not the tourists getting drunk at the bars, not the belligerent residences harassing us, none of that. So where do we safely exist in your community? Can you give us that answer versus constantly telling us where we don't belong? Anybody? Where do we safely exist at? We will go there. And please, stop calling it camping, because we're humans. We deserve as much as the stray dogs you put in humane society.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who would like to address the camping ordinance? Sir, come on up.
My name is Michael Smith. I currently reside in Otis, but I do own industrial property within the city of Newport and South Beach. I came here tonight to understand and speak to the rezoning ordinance, which I think is coming up later, but I have to say that listening to what appears to be amendments to pull teeth from a well-intentioned ordinance that would keep a semblance of civil order in the city of Newport, that would defend property owners and taxpayers, that's being undermined. And as a taxpayer for many, 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 many years, I'm appalled. You know, we have this pretense that somehow people that are homeless, whether you call them campers, whether you call them houseless, whatever the label du jour is, when I was growing up, they were called vagrants. But they're supposed to be the victim somehow. When what they are is they're subsuming private property, public property that the taxpayers pay for. They're take. Tell us who feeds us. Tell us where we go. They don't do anything. All of those of us who pay taxpayers are the ones that are being taken from. I think we're the true victim. And I think that the city and the council should stand up for the people that pay for this building, that pay for the public property, that pay for the private property, that pay for the businesses that bring people to the coast. And those are the true victims. And so I just want to say that I'm tired of seeing the erosion of social order over the last decade. I used to go to Portland for a dinner out sometimes. Portland to me was a city that was a jewel of the Northwest. I won't even go there anymore. I'm afraid to walk the streets in Portland. I don't want to see Newport. They'll go down the same path 10 years from now. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment? Come on up, certainly. Hi.
My name's Deborah Riley, and I live in Newport. I am recently homeless. I have paid taxes my whole life. I moved here for a job. It fell through, so I had to go out there. I am surviving, and it is scary, but just because there's one or two bad seeds out there, it doesn't apply to all of the homeless people. And that's about all I can say about that. we want to be off the streets. A lot of us do. I'd like to get into some housing where I can better myself and my life again. I'm 61 years old. It's okay. And I speak again for the community of the homeless as a whole. Regarding the bad apples, you know, I don't know what to say about that. And, you know, I just hope that things get better out there. But the majority of us, we don't want to hurt any residents, any homeowners, anyone. I used to work. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address this issue right now? Well, thank you all for speaking. I know it can be very difficult to get up in public and express your views when they're very close to your heart, and we appreciate you all being here. Okay. I am now going to close the public meeting. Follow my little script here. Counselors, you have some discussion? Counselor Kaplan?
This is really hard. It's really hard. I feel like we owe both sides of the coin, but I feel like one step that we can, one is that we do need to set some rules, make it clear. The other side is as a couple of folks have pointed out, we've got to be ready to really take some action in terms of if we say you can't be here, then we have to be able to work on where you can be and rules about that. And I don't feel like we haven't had a lot of options to do that, but it's time. That has to be a priority here. People need to be someplace, and there are different views of people who are homeless. It's not the homeless. There are people who are homeless who are homeless because they're mentally ill. There's people who are homeless because they just lost a job. There's people who are homeless because the housing in our country has become crazy. And I don't know that Newport can solve that, but I think we've got to look for some ways to have places for people to be. And I understand the objection to the term camping. I'm not quite sure what to use, but it's not meant in a pejorative sense. And so I don't want to get hung up on that. So I'm in support of doing this. I think first step is to say, okay, here's something definite, but we've got to do that with sensitivity and with a commitment as a council, I believe, that enough. We got to figure out something, and we've got to make that a priority. And I hope you all feel that same way. Thank you.
Councilor Goebel?
Yeah, I agree with that, Jan. I think our next step, Spencer, is get something on the agenda to where we would like people to camp if they're homeless, because I think that's a legitimate concern, and I sympathize with people that are homeless, but we also need to have rules and regulations of where we feel people shouldn't be camping in our city. So, but let's do that next. Next step is to move into where we can put it. And I'm not sure where that is yet, but I think we need to start working on that. Yeah. And find some money to do that. Now, we've talked about it. We've talked about a couple of opportunities where we could have a shelter, where we could have camping, but we really haven't put a lot of energy into it. So maybe this is the time.
Yeah, I think just on that particular issue, there's been probably more energy put into it than you think. We don't have good solutions yet, and that's what the challenge is in trying to figure out how do we resolve these issues? Because again, we've been working real intently with this countywide process to try to figure out solutions, because it's not just a Newport issue. It's not a Lincoln City issue. It's not a Yachats issue. We're a city. We provide water. We provide sewage. We provide recreation services. We provide general governmental services, police and fire. We are not a social agency, and it's hard for us to be, we can't, I think there was a suggestion that we open a hospital. I mean, that's not something we can do. What we can do is certainly work to provide assistance financially or otherwise to an effort that's in place. And the council has appropriated money specifically for that purpose. And we're hoping that out of this countywide process that's going on, there's going to be some clear avenues of having some opportunities to address certain aspects of homelessness. Again,
Right.
the issue is so broad that, it's overwhelming for the folks that are homeless. It's overwhelming for us in city government trying to figure out how to deal with it. It's overwhelming for the property owners that feel impacted by some of the negative impacts that they feel homelessness brings upon them. And so we understand the problem. It's trying to find the solutions, and we're really committed to working on that. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow or next week. And I think your suggestion of discussing this a little further is something that we can certainly put on a future agenda to have that discussion. But we have not been able to find very good alternatives to date. So.
Well, I agree with the person that testified that said, you're telling us where not to go. Please tell us where we can go. So if we take a position where you can't be, then I think we also need to take a position where you can be. Yes. So I think that's a very legitimate point. I commend you. Who said that? Yeah, you did. Thank you. And I think that's a very legitimate point. We can't be just a one-sided city, So.
Mayor Sawyer?
Yeah, I just want to echo what Jan said, especially about the mental health services here. The city does not even have one employee that works in mental health. That's the county and the state prerogative. And unfortunately, that's broken down at the state level. And we all know that we have advocated through the League of Oregon Cities every year. We talk to them and we give them our 5 priorities, and mental health is always on that list. And unfortunately, the state has ignored it, in my view, and I could be wrong on that. The other thing I want to say is we're a town of 10,000. We are not a large town like Portland. Portland last year spent $250 million on the homeless, and as we have all seen, it doesn't even make a dent in the problem up there. Our budget committee works very hard every year to squeeze out every dime they can out of the small property taxes that we end up getting. And somebody was talking earlier about the cost of housing here, and it is high, but that's something that the city has no say in. We can't regulate the market here, unfortunately. It would be nice if we could have a city ordinance saying a 1-bedroom apartment can't be more than $900. A 2-bedroom apartment can't be more than whatever. But unfortunately, we can't do that. And we're kind of in a rock and a hard place here on most of these issues because we're just a small town. We don't have a shelter, although we are working on trying to find one. And the problem with the shelter is the cost of property right now to get a building in town would probably be $1 million. And we just don't have that. And I've talked to several realtors. There's virtually no buildings available anyway. The market here is the vacancy rate is almost zero for commercial and residential. And it's hard. It's something we can't deal with, unfortunately, at a city level. And I think people need to understand what we can and cannot do. And I think that we're working as hard as we can to do what we can, but it's very limited just because of the fact that there's other organizations and other authorities that have control over things that we don't have. It would be nice for us to say, yeah, we're going to take this apartment complex at 3rd and I, and we're going to turn it over to the homeless and kick everybody out. We can't do that. And, of course, you kick them out, then they're homeless too. So there's a problem there. But anyway, I think that, we are trying to work on this shelter. We've been working very hard on that. It's a ways off, unfortunately. We had a report from Lola Jones at the Samaritan House a couple years ago, and she told us that the cost of running a shelter is $10,000 a month just for the employees. It doesn't include the other associated costs. So there's it's very expensive to do that. And again, I'll just have to say, unfortunately, we are a small town, and these issues are harder, in my view, on smaller communities than it is on Portland. And, you know, I think we've had a great conversation tonight. I think we've heard from a lot of people, and everybody has a valid point. I'm not going to say anybody here that hasn't said anything that's not valid, but it's just hard because we just don't have the resources and the funds to do these things.
Councilor Bateo?
I want to follow up on the shelter because I know that we cannot be a social agency or, or provide or start a shelter. But the question is, maybe there's potential people who are ready to move to work on these shelters. And my question is how the city can support somebody who's ready to say, I want to open a shelter. What kind of support you're going to provide me, and how, if this person opens a shelter, what the regulations are there? Are there going to be some coding that maybe the city we can work to make it easier for a person to open a shelter?
I think from a number of things, from a state law standpoint, the placement of shelters has been greatly deregulated, so it's easier to place a shelter in a location where in the past, there were many restrictions about how you could do that. So from a state law, the actual placement of shelter has been made easier to do those things because, again, everyone wants a shelter. They don't necessarily want it, in their particular neighborhood, and that's one of the big challenges that we have. I think from the standpoint of one of the issues that we have is the capacity of our nonprofits to partner in these sorts of organizations. If you go to Portland or Eugene or other places, they've got large nonprofits that the city usually is partnering with to provide these services, and that's one of the things that the committee that Councilor Kaplan and Jacoby are on is really taking a look at is how do we build our capacity of our nonprofits to be partners and be able to support these sorts of things. And that building that capacity is really critical because, again, even with our religious organizations in this community, which oftentimes are a major provider of services, their capacity and their size of their congregations are such that they have a hard time participating in some of the programs that we see in larger cities where they've got larger congregations and larger numbers of folks to really try to make a difference in some of these areas. So building that nonprofit capacity is one of the big things. The other big thing is collectively we'll have the ability to have a position that's focusing on this issue on a countywide basis. We don't have that now. The county doesn't have anyone in that position. None of the cities have the capability of having that in that position. But this demonstration grant will have the ability to have someone that can focus specifically on how do we move the ball forward on these issues here in Lincoln County. And I think that's going to be a really critical thing to make progress in these areas. And so I'm really feeling optimistic about the process that's in place to bring resources together from across the county to address this countywide issue. And I think that's going to be absolutely necessary in order to take some of these things to the next steps that have been suggested here tonight. So nothing's going to happen in a short period of time. Council has designated a fairly substantial amount of funds for a solution to some aspects of homelessness. But again, even when we talk about shelter, it depends on what that shelter is as far as who's actually going to be helped in that shelter. Is it going to be a low bar shelter where anyone can go in, or are people going to have to be in a different situation where they're trying to work themselves out of this cycle and be drug free? And so there's different. When we talk about shelter, we've got a population that has so many different needs and so many different issues. a shelter is going to deal with probably one aspect of that issue if we had, developed a new shelter here in the community. And I think, obviously Samaritan House has done some great work in transitioning folks there. Grace Winds, really puts their heart into doing the level of work they can do in this community and is a great asset for the community as well. But again, they need more capacity. These other organizations need more capacity in order to really be able to come to the table to do that. But one of the other thoughts that has come out of this process is really on a regional basis putting together a proposal that has enough financial support to actually draw someone in to either develop someone internally or draw someone in to really provide a specific service. The one thing that we've learned in our efforts, we tried to develop car parking, in one lot. The one thing that we've learned from that whole process is unless we have someone that's able to supervise those sorts of things, it's going to be a problem. We talked about the safety even here at City Hall with the incident that occurred, not from the folks that were camping here, but people that came into the camp. And if we are involved in identifying a location for that, we also have to be in a position where we are partnering with someone to oversee that situation, because it's not going to control itself and it's not going to provide the safety that folks are in there unless there is a structure and someone responsible for overseeing the safety of the folks in that particular program. So we, like I said, we are working hard on that aspect of it. I'm more optimistic at this point than I've been in the 9 years I've been here that something positive is going to come out of this process, but it's going to take a little while yet. So.
Thank you, Spencer. And one of the things I just going to...
She was in the middle.
I just going to finish. I have something that I want to say that is very challenging. And, when we have emergencies like a fires or earthquakes, we tend to have an shelter, an emergency right away. And this needs and strength to put together. We don't have to wait for fires or disasters to happen, something like this. I think, it's something that I see the other side, and I'm thinking, well, do we need to wait we had another fire to have a shelter right away, an emergency? If we think that way, we can create faster way to get there. I don't know. I'm hoping, if someone comes, tomorrow, we are ready to do something right away and not wait the last minute. I think it's a very important, process. I know processes that are very important, but it has been a long way process.
Right. Well, I think on that point too, there's the grant application that we had before us. Originally, Grace Winds was going to try to be the applicant, and then that got changed to another entity. When those opportunities come along, we jump on them immediately. And it's going to take time for those things to actually develop. And so I think from a support standpoint, we are trying to be as responsive as we can when those opportunities come along. Unfortunately, there's not been many real opportunities that have, materialized. So.
Okay. Councillor Kaplan?
I appreciate what everybody's thinking and saying, but I find myself saying often the same things. But wait, we don't have the money, we don't have the resource. So God damn it, we need to get the resources. And I feel passionate about this. It's somebody's mother who's homeless. It's somebody's daughter who's homeless. It's somebody's granddaughter who's homeless. It's somebody's uncle. And if that hits you personally, a week is not. You just can't do it. So we keep saying we don't have the resources. And I know I've been on the budget committee, and And I hear from people all over the community. We get a lot of letters and comments to the city council. We know people care about this, you know, one side or the other, but everybody's saying we need to do something. Put up some money. What do we need to do to create some kind of community fund? Do we need to try to pursue some tax measure? It may not be tomorrow, but it can't be 2 years from now because we're still saying we don't have the resources. Do we find a way? Have bake sales? That's silly, but have car sales.
Yeah.
But we need to focus on, if we keep talking about solutions that we can't do, and then everybody says, but that would be nice, but we can't do it, then the part of the problem is we don't have the resource, so let's get the resource.
Right. Well, and remember, we have 400,000 that the council has put as, you know, for a partnership to make something happen. But, you know, we could spend that money tomorrow, and then in a year from now, we're going to be in the same boat that we're.
So we need an ongoing source of revenue and some type of tax, at least a measure to put in front of people, or some better use of the tourist tax. Or that's not my area. I've got some expertise in that area, but we've got to find a way to have a sustained source of funding, because if we can build a building, but if we don't have anybody to staff it, it's going to be that building that's sitting there. But we just need to get serious. And I'm not saying anybody's not serious, but sometimes I find myself doing that with, well, we don't have the resource. So what are we going to do about it?
Right. But again, that's the process that you're involved with, is really identifying a sustainable model to support programs to address aspects of homelessness. And that's going to require all the cities participating in some financial sense, along with the county, to make that happen. But you know, the other thing is we can have the money, but if we don't have the means to deliver those services to a population of homelessness in a meaningful way, that's the other challenge. And so we've got some funds, but we need to have a mechanism to do that. And we've worked last winter, we worked closely with Grace Winds to provide housing during cold weather, where we directly funded hotel rooms, and that's something that we're going to have to do again, I think, this year, if we don't have anything that's more permanent put in place. And those are things that we have done in partnership with the community. But again, those are Band-Aids. They aren't.
But, you know, and I agree with it, but if given that we don't have sustainable funding, that nobody's rushing forward to say, hey, I'll do it, but I'll go broke tomorrow, that perhaps if we created some sustainable funding, you know, on some scale, there'd be organizations more willing to say, we'll take that on, because we can, if we take this on, we're not shut down after 6 months. And so that's, we need to think about that.
But again, that's part of this whole process you're involved with, is developing this strategy that's going to be sustaining some efforts beyond a 1 year period. Because we can do something for 1 year, but we'll be right back where we're at in year 2 if there's not a method to handle it. So.
Councilor Goebel?
Yeah, Spencer, I agree with you. I don't think as a city, I don't think we can take on housing people for the rest of our life. You know, I mean, we just don't. But I think as a city, we also have a responsibility to make sure people in our community are taken care of and are housed properly. So I commend you for doing that with the county and the other cities. I think that's the best solution we get to have a joint effort. But I also hope that we don't just develop a process just to house people, you know, I mean, forever, so that the process is to get people back on their feet, help them when they're down. And right now, the people have no place to go. I hear from the people that come here. You know, they're just surviving. They're trying to figure out how to make it from one day to day. So I appreciate the people coming and testifying. I'm sure that was hard for them to do, you know. But on the other hand, I also want to help those people, our residents in our community, who are struggling also with dealing with the homeless population in our community. So let's get busy trying to figure out the yes answer rather than the no answer.
Yes.
Counselor Parker?
As far as affordable housing goes, we're often our own enemies by bleeding out a lot of these grant monies, and things end up going to consultants than to buildable units. And that's a huge structural problem in the state. That's another reason why we can't afford high-speed rail, because it's $1 million a mile, because all the consultants take all the money and raise the price of the projects. And so, to Spencer's point, a direct services shelter, however that may look, needs to be run by a reputable and well-funded countywide nonprofit. And so far, we don't have any proposals in front of us for that, but at least there's money currently to develop that short list of which operator that will be. But these aren't structural problems we're going to solve tonight. So I'm ready to make the motion unless anyone else has anything else to say.
Counselor Hall, any comment from you? No? Okay. Well, I would like to say that there is a lot of activity going on citywide and countywide, because every city in the county has this problem of caring for our fellow citizens. It's just such a huge problem. But I think with the state and federal money, which is starting to open up and come our way, and we have planning at the county level and coordination, I mean, it's so hard to be patient, and winter is coming. You know, we are all very, very concerned about people who do not have homes and houses. We really are. So we ready to move on this? Okay, go ahead.
We'll go ahead and move. I move to place for final passage and read by title only ordinance number 2198, an ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 9.50 and amending Section 6.25.010 of the Newport Municipal Code related to camping, and for ordinance number 2198 to take effect immediately upon adoption.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved by.
All right, second.
I'm losing you here. It's been moved by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Hall.
No, Kaplan.
No, she just raised her hand. Okay.
I heard Kaplan first, yeah.
Forget.
He's
Side convo that we're.
he's giving up here.
Are you giving up?
Counselor Hall.
Okay.
This is my prerogative here. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? No. Hearing none.
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose.
You oppose? One opposition. Eric, will you please take a roll call vote
Yeah, read by title first, and then.
and read the title first?
This is ordinance number 2198, an ordinance repealing and replacing chapter 9.50 and amending section 6.25.010 of the Newport Municipal Code related to camping. Kaplan,
Aye.
Mateo,
No.
Goebel,
Aye.
Jacoby,
Aye.
Hall,
Aye.
Parker,
Aye.
Sawyer.
Aye.
Okay.
I just want to say something.
Okay. Motion passes, but, okay.
I just want to say, I feel that's not the solution, going and moving with something like this. It's not the solution. If we have a plan in place right now, and say, okay, we're going to have a shelter, we're going to have a place where people can be moved, I would say yes. But because we don't have a plan, and I hear tonight how hard it is. And believe me, I believe, and I'm a taxpayer too, and I believe the majority of the people we live here, we would like the best for everybody. And this is very challenging to make a decision like this. And I vote no because I totally understand. I have been in places where I hear stories, and it's very challenging. And like one of the ladies said, one couple people that are doing bad things, and everybody's paying for it. And that's what is hard, you know, to make decisions like this. But I just want to say that. That's.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mhm. Okay, we will move on to 6C, please.
This is
Eric?
a public hearing on ordinance number 2196, an ordinance amending the Newport Comprehensive Plan and Map, zoning map, and Title 16? Title 14 of the Newport Municipal Code, implementing recommendations of the South Beach US 101 refinement plan.
Spencer?
In the fall of 2021, the City of Newport completed an Urban Renewal Agency refinement plan to guide the remaining URA investments to be completed in South Beach Urban Renewal District prior to closing the district to new projects in 2027. The comprehensive plan makes certain changes to adjust zoning to support desired uses and development of this area in accordance with the refinement plan. The amendment changes the current comprehensive plan and zoning map designations applied on industrial property located south of Yaquina Bay Bridge and north of the former intersection of the US 101 and Southeast Ferry Slip Road. The property is proposed to be zoned to one of 3 commercial designations. The ordinance also changes the comprehensive plan map designation for South Beach State Park Maintenance Facility from high-density residential to public. The land use regulations impact chapters 14.03, 14.13, and 174.19 of the Newport Municipal Code. If adopted, such current type uses such as self-storage units, salvage and wrecking of heavy machinery, salvage yards, towing, and vehicle storage and other similar uses would be prohibited along the US 101 corridor. Again, that's for new uses. Existing uses will be grandfathered in if they're legally conforming at the time that the ordinance is adopted. Turn it over to Community Development Director Derek Tokos if there's anything else that you want to add to the description of this before we open the public hearing.
I will have a staff report that adds to this a little bit, but before we do that, as this is a land use hearing, we did have a script and some disclosures.
We're going to do that before we
made.
opened up the public hearing. So
okay, I'll defer then to the staff report after the script.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Before we hear any testimony, I am going to read a script for the council to make sure that we have no conflict of interest, and that will explain this. This is the time set for a public hearing on ordinance number 2196, amending the Newport Comprehensive Plan map, zoning map, and Title IX of the Newport Municipal Code, implementing recommendations of South Beach US 101 refinement plan. This is a legislative hearing for the purpose of adopting or amending the city's comprehensive plan, map inventories, land use regulations, and other policy documents that affect the entire city or large portions of it. The City Council is required to hold one or more public hearings at which it will consider the Planning Commission's recommendation and take public testimony before rendering a decision on the ordinance. There are a few announcements I need to make before we start the public hearing. All testimony and evidence presented must be directed toward the relevant criteria in the Newport Comprehensive Plan, Newport Municipal Code, or other land use regulations or standards which the speaker believes to apply to the decision. 2, if you fail to raise an issue on the record supported by statements or evidence sufficient to give the city or other parties an opportunity to respond to the issue, you may be precluded from appealing on that issue to the Land Use Board of Appeals. 3, there are sign-up cards at the entrance to the hearing room to be filled out by anyone wishing to testify. These cards should be given to city staff. When you are called to testify, state your name and address for the record, and please avoid repetitive testimony. During the hearing, I ask those in the audience to refrain from demonstrations in support or opposition of the testimony. Following the staff report, testimony will be taken in the order received on the sign-up cards. All persons will be provided 3 minutes to provide comment. At this time, I would ask council members to disclose any actual or potential financial interest they may have related to this agenda item. If there is an actual conflict of interest, the member must abstain. Potential conflicts of interest need only be disclosed. If anyone present has an objection to the participation of any council member, please raise that objection now. If an objection is made, the counselor to whom it is directed will need to respond and then decide as to whether or not they should recuse themselves. With that, I call for the staff report.
Yeah, before you do that, ask again.
Oh, ask?
If there's any conflicts, either
Any
actual
conflicts?
or potential.
Any disclosures?
Well, I live within the area being discussed, but I have no financial interest in it.
Okay. Okay, I will call for the staff report.
Thank you. Derek Tokos, Community Development. Now, one thing I can do as I go through a few additional items is I can display some of the maps for your reference through the course of this hearing and for those who are making testimony. So if you could just go ahead and log me in, I should be there. Join with the, I'm just going to continue. Yeah, I think so.
Good presentation.
It's this one.
Yeah. Short and to the point.
Just one moment here.
That's not a nice presentation.
He doesn't usually do that, but short and to the point.
I am theoretically sharing a screen. Let's see if it comes through.
I think you have a shot of the Pacific Ocean right now, though, Derek.
Yes, yes. As you are sharing screen.
So we need to push the it's the staff computer?
Let
me come and look.
Technology, yeah. Gotta be a little bit smarter than technology, yeah.
What do you know? There's a map.
All right.
So as a city manager provided an overview what's in this package, but again, I'll just briefly, this work that the Planning Commission started picks up on the recommendations that were made as part of that refinement plan that we completed in the fall. That refinement plan was funded, it focused on the US 101 corridor and South Beach, and it was intended to help guide the remaining investments that the Urban Renewal Agency will be making down there, but also outline some steps to kind of fully leverage those investments. There's a fair amount of public outreach that was done as part of that process, and we did hear loud and clear from folks in South Beach, those that work there, visit there, that own property in South Beach, that they would like to see more retail services down in South Beach. They'd like to see additional food options in South Beach because they're tired of having to go over the bridge for everything that they need. Part of the refinement plan was an audit. It was performed by a consultant, Jet Planning, and it took a hard look at what we might need to do to adjust the city's rules to better support desired uses and development in South Beach, to identify strategies to support future annexation of some of the pockets we have down there, and things we should be doing to enhance compatibility between existing and proposed uses. The commission held a couple of work sessions and a couple of hearings before making a recommendation to you. And they altered the concept somewhat after their first public hearing and based on testimony that they'd received from a number of the affected property owners. I do want to emphasize that all property owners that are affected by these changes receive notice in accordance with the requirements of state law. Anytime we change zoning, we have an obligation to provide that notice, and we did, or potentially changing zoning. And then we provided notice to the state as well as we're required. Now, we have about 40 separate properties that are impacted by the proposal as it currently stands. Most of them are in this area that you see on the map up here. And the proposal is to extend commercial comprehensive plan map designations further to the south to what used to be that intersection of Ferry Slip and US 101. And so currently, the commercial comprehensive plan designation stops more or less at 32nd, though it does pick up that property on the west side of 101. As you can see, commercial is in red on the screen. The reason for this is that the commission agreed with Jet Planning's assessment that we need additional commercial zone land in South Beach to support the types of uses I was just talking about, retail, service, additional food service. Currently, we have light industrial zoning in these areas, and while light industrial zoning is highly flexible, it also has, the flip side of that is it allows such a broad range of uses that it can be a deterrent for retail service type uses coming in because they have no confidence as to what's going to happen around them. And that it allows in industrial uses that would effectively conflict with retail and service type activities. So the commission, that's the area that would go to industrial, or go from industrial to commercial in terms of its comprehensive plan map designation. And then there is a area further to the south that's not currently in the city where there was a map error that we should correct. And that's at the south end of the South Beach State Park where their maintenance facility is located. That is a part of the park. We've acknowledged it as part of the park through acknowledging the state's master plan for the park that was last updated, I believe, in 2017 or 2018. And so it's more appropriate in a public designation than high-density residential. It's not going to be developed for residential purposes. And it was likely a map error from back when this was originally done in the early 80s, when there was just macro scale mapping and they just weren't precise down to the specific boundary line. Those are the comprehensive plan map changes. And as you know, with comprehensive plan map, that's a broader designation. So under the commercial umbrella, there are 3 different commercial zoning designations that the city has. All 3 are being recommended in different locations. So the Aquarium Village area, immediately adjacent to the aquarium, right up here, on the northernmost here, is being recommended to go from I-1 to C2, which is tourist commercial. That is consistent with the zoning immediately to the west here. That's tourist commercial as well. And while this is water related where the aquarium is built, it's actually a blend of water related and tourist commercial. It's developed as obviously an entertainment oriented venue, the Oregon Coast Aquarium. Tourist commercial in that area, has already largely with the Aquarium Village footprint there, you have quite a bit of tourist commercial, restaurant and retail already in there, but you also have some light industrial. And so in those cases where you have light industrial development, it's fully built out, industrial condominiums, for example, and those can continue as they're developed. And the way the city has non-conforming provisions in Newport, that means they run with the land. You can not only, as a current owner, continue to maintain them, the ordinary care, but you can sell it as an industrial condo to a buyer and they can use it for like type purpose and continue to maintain it. In the city of Newport, if you have a non-conforming use or are grandfathered is another term for it, you can also do expansions through a review process that goes to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission's view was that in this area, and the other 2, frankly, that we're going to be talking about here, there's very little in the way of opportunity for expansion of industrial uses. They're largely built out. on smaller parcels. But the commission's reasoning for the C2 area was that this is an area that is going more towards tourist-oriented commercial. It's an appropriate designation at that location, and that's why the change. The I-1 to C1, which is along the US 101 corridor there, the largest of the two blocks, if you want, or 3 blocks of land, that would go from I-1 to C1. That area, in the commission's view, is most suitable for retail service, has best exposure to US 101. And we're beginning to see a little bit of more in the way of retail services in that area, and there's more opportunity for that in that area. And then you have the I-1 to C3 on the east side of Ferry Slip. The commission agreed to go with the C3 designation there at the request of most of the property owners down there. That includes Barrelhead and a number of light industrial and some homes that are presently non-conforming under an industrial designation. The trade-off there with a C3 is that for any future light industrial use, it goes through a public hearings process, much like the non-conforming expansion would be. But in a C3, like the other commercial zones, you have the ability to do residential on a floor other than the main floor. And that is not an option in the I-1. The I-1's residential is limited to a watchman's residence, so it's quite limited. Whereas in the commercial zones, you can do a little bit more in the way of residential. And there's some capacity on the east side of Ferry Slip where you could see apartments over a retail shop, for example. There are also some I'm going to probably just leave it on this map. There are also some land use regulatory changes to the code that were included in there. One of those has to do with moving forward south of the bridge, uses such as self-storage, salvage wrecking, towing, vehicle storage would not be permitted, new uses moving forward. The principle there is, you have a low employment generation, lower tax generation with a number of those types of uses, particularly in the unincorporated areas. I mean, self-storage made some sense. You don't have sewer service, can't have a lot of employment, so it was a logical use when it's in an unincorporated environment. But the city, and through its urban rural agencies, invested heavily in getting water and wastewater services extended down to 50th. We'd like to see a little bit more intense uses, some flex industrial where we have very little of it, but a lot of demand for that type of space with small businesses. But those require sewer. And so the commission's recommendation is moving forward in these areas, if you have an existing self-storage use or towing use or a salvage or wrecking use, you could pursue modifications or expansions. That would be permissible. You'd be non-conforming. But they wouldn't continue to be allowed outright along the corridor for the reasons noted. We also, the commission also felt that in the C1, vehicle repair should go conditional. That would be citywide. Their view is that vehicle repair uses that are fully enclosed within a structure are just fine in a C1 zone. They also recognize that a lot of the auto sales, which are permitted through a conditional use process in the C1, have a repair component to them. So likewise, that makes sense for it to be conditional in the C1. Lastly, with respect to the setbacks down there, their recommendation is to take what is currently a 50-foot setback from US 101 in the industrial zones and take that down to 15 feet. And that as properties develop down there, they would be landscaping that 15-foot buffer, providing some separation between the use or uses along the US 101 corridor and that heavy volume of traffic we have along the US 101 corridor. So again, the Planning Commission took this up, made some adjustments to the jet planning recommendation, took this to a public hearing, heard from those who are impacted, made further revisions to the package in response to that, took it back out for a second public hearing and made a recommendation of the package you have in front of you following that second public hearing. So, any questions of staff?
Any questions from the council? No.
Is the, so this partial map, what happens south of this new C1 zone, that pretty much stays the same?
That would stay the same. That would still, that's largely light industrial down there. Although we do have about a 14-acre piece on 40th that is heavy industrial, and that will stay. That was a point of discussion with the Planning Commission. Jet Planning had recommended that heavy industrial piece go to light industrial. The Planning Commission felt, after taking testimony, that it should stay heavy industrial for the time being. Given the owner's investments backed expectations, and that property, unlike any of the others, has not been developed yet. But when the city does annex further to the south and brings in more industrial land to the south, there may be an opportunity to introduce some heavy industrial down there and then revisit this. They are concerned that that piece on 40th, as development happens around it, is going to be less and less suitable for heavy industrial, since that type of zoning by its nature should be a little bit further away from residential areas, given the noise, dust, and different odors that can be generated from some of the heavy industrial uses. You probably naturally have some of that separation further south, given the number of wetlands we have, but the commission didn't feel comfortable changing that from its current heavy industrial designation right now, given how little heavy industrial we actually have within the city as compared to light industrial, which we have quite a bit of.
Excuse me, Spencer, I think I'm to take two pieces of public comment here first before we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I would go to the hearing, and then you can respond to questions later.
Okay.
After that.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll get into a discussion before
Right.
we open the public
Yeah,
hearing.
that's okay. I will open the public hearing. I have two public comments here so far from Lynn Smith and Bill Rowley. Whoever wants to come up first.
Oh.
Thank you. My name is Lynn Smith. I live in Otis, but I am a part owner in one of the units. Could we possibly have the picture back up? Or is that? Okay, that's okay. And I guess it's the upper right section that's going from I-1 to C2. And the building that we are unit owners is the one that's the farthest over to the right, yeah, right where you are. Anyway, you did, Mr. Tokas, is that how you see? You
Yes.
did answer a lot of our questions already, so thank you very much. And I had a couple of comments and maybe a question. I did hear the recording, the video of the one long work session. And there were a lot of questions about my co-owner and husband's testimony there. That particular building is South Bay Industrial Condos, and there are 14 units in it, all separate tax units and owned by all different people. So we had a lot of concerns about how all this would break out. Now, you did say that things are grandfathered, and I'm not quite sure how long that's supposed to be, but so somebody could sell a unit and that could cycle around forever. The building is co-owned by the association and managed by the association, but the units are all individually owned. It's not really a conducive building to like stores and things like that, as it is. Anyway, but like I said, you answered a lot of our questions, and my one would really be, how long is the grandfathering good for? Because you said we could resell and it would still be okay under industrial. Would that last until every last unit was sold, or would you end up with a mix of different uses in the one building, and they'd probably conflict with one another? Because the way people use the building now, it's a little bit of light industrial, it's a lot of personal storage, that kind of thing. There really isn't any place to park. It would be kind of hard to have some people parking customers and other people trying to get access to their units. So I guess that was my question. How long is the grandfathering? And will all that come out in something that we can all read and understand?
The grandfathering, and I appreciate your question, would last with an industrial condominium development like that with multiple unit owners and I assume a set of CC&Rs that more or less govern the common area. You're probably looking at that for the remaining useful life of the facility.
Yeah.
It would be my guess, because any change to that likely has to be agreed upon. Not to mention you're getting into building code issues to change from storage to retail. You start having conversations about parking and things of that nature, which it really doesn't have. So my sense is that, you would be maintaining that as an industrial condominium development for the remaining useful life of the improvements. And at some point, collectively, we would see that, the owners come together and look to do some other development way down the road.
Yeah.
But again, the grandfathering runs with the land. It's not personal to any individual owner. And so you would be able to sell it just like any other unit owner would be able to sell it for the same like type use for somebody to come in and continue to use it as the rest of the industrial condos are used.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Rowley, would you like to make a comment?
Bill Rowley, Newport, only for 62 years, I guess. I'm kind of a Johnny-come-lately. Own 4 different parcels down in the South Beach area that are under. One of them's on 32nd, which it's just a cabinet maker's in there now, light industrial. It certainly wouldn't make a good retail location whatsoever. But my big concern is out on 101 on our property. It says no new mini storage, no new towing. Well, I've been in the towing for over 30 years. We took a 5-year sabbatical here a few years back. Ended up buying it back with my daughter as a partner. If we'd changed and had this no towing, we wouldn't have been able to do that. That property was purchased to run a tow company out of. Has for a long time, but if they put this wording in, if I close it for, I think, Jericho, for more than 12 months, we couldn't reopen as a towing facility. And then we also have another vacant lot that we might want to build storage on someday. It's wetlands now, but I'm too old to build on it, but my kids might want to or something someday. That was purchased to be storage, if it's going to be anything. And we'll put, the wording in no, mini storage, I get. And then I go back flip back to the towing thing. Why are we excluding just towing? We could be a trucking company, that'd be okay. We can be an excavation company, is that okay? But not a towing company. Anybody answer that question for me, Eric?
This is a public hearing where you are talking to us. There's not a good, yeah, sorry.
Well,
so just tell us your thoughts, please.
Well,
yeah.
we purchased her, over 30 years ago to do that. That's what we've been doing out there. I don't think we're junky. If you drive by, my place looks a lot better than City Hall does, so.
Hey, Bill? Hey,
Yes.
Bill? Yeah, Dietmar.
And excuse me, this is a
Wait
public
until you
hearing.
complete
Yeah.
the public hearing, and then you can respond to some of these. And ask
Conversation afterwards, or you can meet with Derek at another time.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for staying so late for our meeting so you can testimony. Thank you. Okay.
Council President, I think it's appropriate if Derek wants to respond to that
Okay.
now that the public hearing is closed, and then Dietmar can, Councilor Goebel can. Oh, okay. When you close it, you can do that. So.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other comments from the public? If not, I shall close the public meeting.
Public hearing.
Public hearing. Thank you. Okay, next.
So I had a question for Bill.
Okay, go ahead. And then Derek can respond,
Hey,
right?
Bill, your property that, as far as I can see from the map, you're not being rezoned or nothing's happening to your property.
No, that's part of the, where they say there's no new, anything south.
So Bill, if you can come up to the microphone, because we have to get you recorded and on the mic. And because you're popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only building that's affected, that would be affected is that where the cabinet shop is right now, which goes from I-1 to C1, right?
Correct. That's one that's.
But your towing company and your storage units, they're way south.
They are, but they're in this, what they're telling me is the 101 corridor. It will get annexed into the city at some point.
Yeah, that annexation
And
process
so
we've
if we
been
change
talking
the
about.
municipal code to no new towing company, like I say, if we closed and tried to reopen, we couldn't do that.
Right now, you're in the county, right?
Correct.
And so if that gets annexed, what would he come in as?
Well, he'd come in as industrial, but he would be subject to, and rightfully, it's a reasonable concern of his he's raising. He's concerned that if once annexed, then basically the towing and self-storage uses would become non-conforming. What that means is that, they could continue to be operated. You can expand onto neighboring properties through a review process, and you're subject to Planning Commission approval. And if you cease the use for a full year or more, then that non-conforming right goes away. And so that's...
What he was telling us is correct, so.
I'm sorry?
And we've taken a sabbatical here. We sold out to a buddy and ended up buying it back. But we were off that property for about 3 years. He bought another piece.
I guess the question I have then, what Bill asked you, why is towing companies excluded?
The Planning Commission took a look at this, was part of Jet Planning's recommendation, and there were a couple of pieces to that. So towing, self-storage, salvage wrecking, vehicle storage were types of uses that, in their view, you typically have relatively low employment levels as compared to some other industrial uses. Tax generation is a little bit lower, and it's not the aesthetic that they're looking in terms of trying to create a gateway into Newport.
I think his place looks pretty good.
But
Nobody was passing judgment on an individual user. I'm just telling you, those uses, that package of uses was carved out for those reasons, and that was the Planning Commission's reasoning.
Okay, well, we can address that when we, through the annexation process, I guess we can.
Well, if you do that now in the city municipal code, then once we're annexed, it'll already be there. I think I would be, into that program, excuse me. Anyway, I think, and having it just, like I say, having just towing, so I could open a trucking company, and that's okay, like when Midcoast Trucking was there, an excavation company, but not a towing. I don't really understand that, because nobody's ever driven by and seen a wrecked car sitting out in front of my location. They go behind a fence or in the building.
Vehicle storage could include a trucking terminal site, depending on how that's set up, so that may very well not be permitted as well. The excavation company is probably getting more into a heavy industrial, and we may or may not be able to add some additional heavy industrial as we move south. Now, we have an existing concrete batch plant down there, and that site probably lends itself to coming in as heavy industrial. Above and beyond that, I'm not certain. This was the package of uses that were identified through the jet planning evaluation. Planning Commission took a look at it. As you know, going through the process, they tweaked the language somewhat, but it's more or less kind of the package or range of uses that were discussed. They did peel a few items out, but not from, the list as it's presented now.
Yeah, Derek, I think the point is valid that maybe the definitions and the wordsmithing of this exclusionary policy needs to be tweaked just a bit.
I agree.
I think I appreciate you bringing that point to us. And I will also echo that Rowley's is one of the nicest looking buildings down there. And as far as Gateway, my concept of Gateway always was where they planted all that big head lupin across from the fish market there, and that looks good now in the summers. That new dirt berm and eventually landscape space, FYI, to Anita, could use some beautification in that site-specific spot. That's where I kind of had envisioned a welcome to Newport sign or welcome to South Beach sign, not much farther south where there's already existing industrial use. So I would say I'd like to see a really hardened definition, because there are parts up in Lincoln City where excavators have highway frontage, and it's not always what I would consider scenic due to the nature of its business. But I think beyond 40th is too far south to put a welcome sign anywho, because of the narrow right of way.
I agree. I think there's a lot of things in South Beach that are included now, including storage of boats and things, that the boatyard, which I think is sometimes kind of trashy looking. I think Bill's place looks a lot better than some of the places in South Beach. So I would like to open that discussion up again to see why he was excluded and what we can do to include him.
Me too. I would like to see open discussion on those.
I have a question. The notes from the July 25th Planning Commission meeting, Bob Berman asked for a map of the properties where the public who testified was, but this is a lot, and I haven't located that map. Is it in here, the one where the people who testified through the process is? Is it a map? It says that you said that would happen, so I just wanted to follow up and see, is it in here, just that I'm missing
That
it?
was in the work session packet. It's not in the hearing packet. I don't believe it was in the work session packet.
Thanks.
So if we make this change, if the council decides they want to make this change, does it have to go back to the planning commission?
No. No, you don't have to accept all aspects of the planning commission recommendation.
So we can make a change at council level if we want to?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Done with me?
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What we'd have to do is just wordsmith it, so when it comes back for the second public hearing for potential adoption, the language based on this discussion would be there for you to take a look at, and hopefully we wordsmith it to everyone's satisfaction, but if not, we can always make minor adjustments and actually read those adjustments at the time of adoption, as long as it's read into the record, so.
This is just the first hearing of this.
Right, I'm talking about the second hearing, which is what this is about, scheduling for a second hearing. We can make those adjustments and have that reviewed, if the council wants to move in that direction.
Yeah, and what I would suggest is, and maybe we need a little more discussion on it before we do that, but a little more direction to Derek on how you think that should be addressed. Is it just dealing with that particular use in that particular district, or is it on the zoning map? And maybe, Derek, you can talk a little more about the options that the council would have in trying to address this issue.
Well, can I give my suggestion and then hear what Derek has to say? Or,
if Cynthia will let you.
Yes, Councilor Parker.
I am overstepping my bounds yet again. So if you think of it aerially, 101 goes past 40th. There was a boat for sale there, by the way. Maybe you can wrap that into the ordinance. And it goes down towards Rally's Towing and the South Beach Marine and RV, one of my favorite stores. And then it gets even more narrow, and there's a mobile park. So beyond the triag place there, the concrete plant, the highway gets super narrow. So I'm really only talking about between 40th and 50th as far as where an anchor entrance, beautification area would be. And between those south of 40th and north of 50th, there isn't a lot of developable land near the highway that would affect any sort of beautification efforts. So there are several properties in there that are graveled in and compacted, awaiting development. To your point there, for future expansion of some of those existing uses, and I just would personally like to see south of 40th and in north of 50th to leave those, I don't know if traditional use is the right word, leave that area to be developed into commercial or light industrial as it currently stands, would be my hope. And then north of 40th, I'd be willing to look at more restrictive development for zoning.
Councilor Goebel?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Rowley's, and I think if you wanted to put something together for that particular piece, that's fine, to include him as a outright use in industrial property, as a towing facility, because I don't see the towing facility any more detrimental or visually negative than some of the other places that are there, and I think Raleigh's doing a great job in keeping that fairly clean. I think the lumber yard there on the left side is probably more trashy than most any places there that are there. So I would entertain a couple of options maybe that you can put together for us to take a look at and see what we want to do. I don't know. What do you think, Spencer?
Well, I think from the standpoint of how to address it, there's certainly two ways to address it. First of all, I think council needs to be careful not to do something based on one particular business, because you're really dealing with a class of types of uses, and even though Raleigh's does a very good job, there could be other types of developments that go in. So think of it more broadly in those terms of what it is. But I'd ask Derek, was there any discussion looking either way at either adjusting the zoning or adjusting the allowable uses within the commercial district?
Yeah, this discussion was largely, this isn't the map issue so much as it's the change of permissible uses in industrial areas south of the bridge. The commission did actually, that list of uses was a little bit bigger and slightly different than it is now, and the commission adjusted out a few uses they felt were appropriate as they went through this process. So, what you have here with this narrower set of uses, I think you have a few options. One, you could further narrow it or eliminate it, or you could impose some language in there that says, okay, we'll allow them to continue with some additional screening or standards of that nature. So they have some supplemental standards to address the aesthetic piece of it. I think one of the principal concerns with self-storage is it just doesn't connect to sewer because it doesn't need it. And that's why we have a lot of it down there, because they didn't have sewer service traditionally, which then means the city's water and sewer main extensions that it put down to 50th will probably continue to sit that way unused or underutilized for a period of time until, you have somebody who desires to develop more intense industrial uses. I think that was the commission's concern. They accepted Jet Planning's reasoning there in terms of the low employment and thus, really no need to connect to city services that are down there that can support higher levels of employment and more intense industrial uses. So in short, I think your options are, you could further curtail that list or eliminate it at all in its entirety, or you could put in some standards to require supplemental screening that gets at the aesthetic. And as Councilor Parker said, you could also say maybe we'll retain them, but we'll only retain them to 40th. The restrictions just for that one run there between 35th and 40th, and leave the rest of that alone. I wouldn't be too concerned about anything south of 50th, because when it comes to annexation, the city can annex those pockets that it surrounds, but south of that, it would have to be an owner-initiated annexation, and they're not going to initiate an annexation unless they want to come into the city with whatever limitations, the city would be imposing.
Well, I feel whatever you have to do, whatever you need to do in the annexation process to keep Rowley as an outright use when it's annexed, that'd be my suggestion. I don't know I don't know, you probably can put something together for us and so we can take a look at it, make it legal.
Derek, I can't quite find the exact words here, but if you would clarify again, the Planning Commission, I think, feels that because this very expensive sewer goes down to 50th Street, that it should be used more heavily, create perhaps more employment, more of a tax base than what Mr. Rowley may be talking about. As good a citizen and business person as he's been for Newport, that is really not what the Planning Commission was intending, I don't believe. Do I understand that right?
I think you have it. It's a slow transition. That's what this is. That's what this is about. By prohibiting self-storage and towing, vehicle storage, salvage and wrecking, that doesn't mean the existing uses down there have to go away at all. But as we annex and pick up those lands, the expectation is other types of industrial uses would begin to establish down there, in particular flex industrial, which we sorely need more of, and requires sewer service, whereas something like self-storage, as I mentioned, doesn't.
Need a sewer,
Correct.
For storage buildings.
Mm-hmm. So it's influencing how that area redevelops over time. Not so much, what can be there right now, but what will be there in the coming years as the existing improvements.
Mm-hmm. So if we would tweak or change the wording, what would the effect be?
Well, it depends on your objective. If your objective is, look, we're not as concerned as the commission was about the need to start to influence this area into a more intense industrial use, then maybe you don't restrict those activities or uses. Or if you believe that, you're concerned about the aesthetic, which was part of the rationale, maybe you put in some supplemental screening or standards of that nature. I mean, so those are some things you can do. So it's just which direction you want to go.
With the rezoning, I guess you have to look at it geomorphologically, because one side of the highway, the west side, is backed up against either wetland on the southwest corner by the park entrance, and then that creek behind the dump truck site there by the glass blowing place. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the east side, it's a totally different ballgame, and there's lots more room for expansion of, to your point, the flex industrial and a bunch of other stuff. So then, I assume the sewer main goes down the east side of the highway, yeah?
We have gravity sewer on both sides in certain locations.
Okay.
It kind of jogs around.
So I guess I wonder if there's a way to split the hairs to get the best result for all businesses, and look at that zoning on the east side of the highway versus the west, and then maybe make some site-specific recommendations for each little block of that zoning change recommendation, so that we're not kneecapping development on either side, but the best match for the flex is on the east side, and the potential for maybe more restrictive but still permissible self-storage on the west side, where there's a bunch of it already. You know what I mean?
One other option you have is you could move these to a conditional use review, and then that puts it in front of the planning commission when somebody wants to do a new project of that nature, and then they can consider it in the context of at whatever time it's proposed, and is it going in the direction we're looking for overall down here or not? So that'd be one other option.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could put a blurb together about that for the next, is that the next work session or?
Council meeting.
Council.
Next council meeting, so we at least have that in the packet to review it, what our options are, you know, as far as, I think as proposed, it's close, but I'd like to see a few other alternatives to what is in today's.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple options that council has. And one would be, instead of scheduling this for a second public hearing and adoption, you could do a work session to discuss it. And because I'm not sure, I think we probably need to get a little better direction on how to accomplish this. I think we understand the concerns, but it might be good to have that discussion before we bring it back for a final approval. But
I'm not going to vote for anything to put somebody out of business, let me tell you.
Okay, you aren't voting
I
to put
guess
them
I
out of
would go
business.
for a
so,
work
but,
session based on your suggestion.
Spencer, could we then consider continuing the hearing to the first meeting in, that'd be the first meeting in November, correct?
Yeah, that would be a month from now.
Which would then provide time for that work session.
Okay, I'd go for it.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ryan.
I will move to continue the public hearing for another public hearing and a potential adoption of consideration of ordinance number 2196 for the council's Eric? November 7th work session. Is that right? Or general evening?
We're going to have a work session. November 7th regular council meeting. Yep.
All right. I move to continue the public hearing on potential adoption of ordinance number 2196 for the council's November 7th, 2022 meeting.
Mm-hmm. With a work session.
With a work session to occur prior to that.
October 17th, right?
On October 17th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's been,
there is we have a horrible situation because the city attorney is confused.
okay.
So, so my question for Derek, because this was put together as part of the process, is we actually were going to schedule a second public hearing. But now we're continuing this public hearing with the work session, or are we actually having a work session and we're scheduling the second public hearing for later on beyond October 17th? Because continuing a public hearing versus scheduling a second public hearing, in my mind, are two different things. So Derek, you want to weigh in on that particular procedural issue?
Okay, I understand.
But that's what Derek had suggested, is what you made your motion. So.
That's fine.
So we'll continue this one into a work session.
Continue
this one into a work session and then have a second public hearing, right?
My preference was just to go ahead and do a continuance and thus avoid having to do another legal publication on it, but that's all. I mean, we can do it as a second public hearing as well, but then I have to republish at cost.
You answered my question, thank you.
Okay.
So the motion is appropriate.
So the motion stands? Well, we have a motion and a second right now. Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second, so.
Maybe Eric could read it, so
Yeah, could we have clarification of that for everyone's edification?
So the motion was a move to continue the public hearing to the November 7th City Council meeting with a work session to occur previous to that.
And specifically, it'd be October
17th work session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone clear?
Yep.
Are we ready to vote on the motions? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Can I ask a question?
And we would like to take a break, but go ahead and have your question first.
Derek, I did look back and I couldn't see that one map that I asked a question about. So can we get that in the work
I'll
session?
see that it's in the work session packet.
And then my other question is, you sent out the notice to the folks who are impacted in the area, and a majority of them came to testify. Were, with exception, like the gentleman who spoke about the towing company, were their concerns addressed by the grandfather clause, is the question I had.
Some, and others had testified originally asking for the C3 as opposed to C1 east of Ferry Slip, and the Planning Commission ultimately agreed with them, and that satisfied their concerns.
Okay, that was just my question. Thank you.
Okay. David?
I got a procedural question, since I'm not quite as familiar with the procedural or notice requirements as you are, Derek. But now that we've continued this as a public hearing to November 7th, and we're now scheduling it as a second public hearing, which would have additional notice requirements, how are we going to notify the property owners that we've actually continued this first hearing to November 7th if no notice requirements are required?
We can send out the mail notice piece of it, so
Good.
we'll
I
go
just
ahead
want to
and
make
do
sure
that.
we're actually at least doing something as far as notification. Okay, good.
Okay. Let's come back at 8:35. Okay?
Gonna catch your power now.
Okay. Let's see, we did that part. Okay. Oh, my gosh. Okay.
7A, yeah.
7, okay. Okay, I am calling the city council back to order. Fine, okay. We are now on number 7.
7A.
7A. Eric, please.
7A is City Manager's Report, authorization of an agreement with the Oregon Water Resources Department, OWRD, for lottery bond funding in the amount of $14 million for the Big Creek Dam project.
Okay, Spencer.
On March 1st, 2021, the City Council authorized a request for funding from the state legislature for the Big Creek Dam design and permitting in the amount of $4 million through the work of State Representative Gomberg, with support from State Senator Dick Anderson. The city actually ended up with $14 million in state funds for moving this project along. The $4 million will be available immediately after the agreement is signed to proceed with various aspects, including the geotechnical explorations and development of the basis for design. Includes the logistics in determining the availability and cost of materials, which is critical in coming up with the final design to make sure that the materials can be brought into site cost effectively to complete a project. Hydraulics, structural analysis, structural modeling, and seismic design criteria will also be done. The $10 million is going to be part of a second bond sale that's scheduled to occur in May of 2023, and that's going to pay for the balance of the design for this project, the permitting, which is an extensive process for a new dam, includes fish passage, water rights, and we'll have to meet all the National Environmental Protection Act environmental standards because it's federal funds that'll be used to build this project. The construction of the dam was estimated to be $80 million prior to the impact that COVID has had and inflation has had on costs. But this $14 million grant, I believe, is the largest grant the city's ever received. And I think it's a very significant way to get this project on track and moving forward. Just recently, Mayor Sawyer, Councilors Parker and Hall, City Engineer Aaron Collette, State Representative David Gomberg, and I participated in meetings in Washington, D.C., and this is part of the next phase of the funding, and that's to get construction dollars from the federal government. The House has appropriated, or has authorized $60 million in the Water Resources Development Act for 2022. That's not currently in the Senate version of the bill. And between now and the end of November, they'll be reconciling the two acts to include whether this project will be an authorized project in the word of bill that eventually is approved by the House and Senate and signed into law by the President. I do want to say that the presentation that was put on for our U.S. senators, our state representative, the House Minority Infrastructure Committee, the Senate Majority Infrastructure Committee staff members, I think was really well received when we were in Washington. We found out that Councilor Hall literally knows everybody in Washington, and it was like people were popping out of every little office to say, "Hey, CM, how you doing?" So, but Councilor Hall did
Thank you for letting me come on the trip so we could get more Newport cred, right?
So anyway, Councilor Hall did the introductions. Mayor Sawyer then talked about kind of the project and the concerns. And Mayor Sawyer did a great job with that. Councilor Parker talked more about the impact that not having a dam would have on the future of this community and the next generation, including his kids that are growing up in this community, and I think was very effective with that message. And then I spoke a little bit about the word of bill and the funding and the ask for the funding there. And I can tell you, from my perspective, I think everyone did just an excellent job in working our way through these meetings. And I think we were very well received by everyone we met with, including the staff people on the infrastructure committee. So I'm feeling much more optimistic about this getting into the Senate bill and getting approved than I certainly was before the trip. And so I don't know if Mayor Sawyer or Councilor Hall or Parker have anything else they want to add about that trip, but the recommendation would be to accept the grant.
I'm prepared to make the motion, but I did want to say I do think that also some spontaneous extra quality time with Representative Schrader and Senator Merkley at the beginning and end of the trip also just kind of clinched our FaceTime later. But getting to see 4 members of our Oregon delegation and get quality time with them was, I think, very helpful as you spoke.
I appreciate
If
everyone
I could
taking
chime
the
in
time
here.
to go. Go ahead, Mayor Sawyer.
Can I chime in?
Sure. Please do.
I would like to echo what Spencer and CM said. I think that in viewing the last trip and this trip, I think this was a more productive trip than the last one. We were able to see more folks. I think that everyone that went did a wonderful job and trying to explain what our issue is and that we have this large need for the federal funding. The thing that I was very impressed with was Congressman Fazio. We've never met with him before. He seemed very relaxed. He didn't seem like, hey, I got to go. And so that was really nice. And then also I was very impressed with Senator Merkley. Not only did he meet us at the U.S. Capitol instead of an office building, he met us in the LBJ room. And that was very special to him. And I thought that was very nice of him to take that extra effort to have a nice time with us in a nice room rather than just an office building. But I really appreciated his time doing that. I appreciated everyone. I just think it was a fabulous trip, and I think that we will see some fruits from this trip.
Okay. Any other comments? Are we ready to move?
I enjoyed shuttling everyone around.
I did already.
Excellent driver. So.
Are we ready to move on this? Nobody's going to turn down $14 million.
I just wanted to thank everyone who made the effort to go on the trip. I know it's rather grueling, 2.5 days back and forth, and we all appreciate your efforts.
And one thing too that we didn't mention, State Representative Gomberg was really, he's a passionate advocate for this dam and did really emphasize that whole point with everybody we met with, and though he doesn't know as many people in Washington as CM does, but
Not yet. Okay.
Okay, I can move on this. I move to approve the Water Supply Fund grant agreement. Do I need to say the numbers? Do I need to say all the things? WPGD 0006-21 for remediation of the Big Creek dams with the Oregon Water Resource Development Department in the amount of $14 million, and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city of Newport.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Hall, seconded by Counselor Mateo. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. On to 7B, please. Eric?
7B is approval of an agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry, ODF, for participation in the Federal Excess Personal Property Program, firefighter property programs.
Okay, Spencer?
the Newport Fire Department has benefited through a series of programs administered by ODF that allows us to use equipment or vehicles as a federal excess, as part of a federal excess equipment program. And we participate in two programs, and we have two vehicles that we utilize through these programs that have been certainly a benefit to the department. So the recommendation is to execute a continuation of the agreement with Oregon Department of Forestry for the next 5 years, with the agreement being subject to review and approval by the city attorney.
Okay.
Now, you already have one Humvee, right? You're not getting another one, or you gotta get his and hers?
No, we'll stay with the one Humvee. We do have a request in for a Type 6 wildland engine. That's the small ones. Not really sure when or if we're going to get one. They're pretty short supply, and it's looking like it will be that way for at least a few years.
Is this used equipment you're getting?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
But it's equipment that is pennies on the dollar. The Humvee, when we got it, we paid $79 for it. It was brand new.
I could pay for that.
That's pretty good.
Or did you say it was brand new?
Basically, yeah. It was actually 2 years old, and it had 79 miles on it, and I need to correct myself on the price. It was $100 and like $60. Basically, you pay for the shipping cost. That's it. The large LNTV unit, what we call the Beast, which there's pictures in your packet of the vehicles. We paid $1,700 for that.
Yeah, very impressive photos. I've seen the one vehicle down on the beach, but not the
They're
not the Beast.
both very capable, and that's the reason why we got them, is because we can get vehicles of this nature that could really have capabilities that no commercial vehicle has.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll move.
Okay.
I like the fire department, yeah.
It's, just to be clear, if you don't make the motion, we still like the fire department.
I know. Thank you.
Was that the motion?
I move to authorize the city manager to execute an agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry for participation in the federal excise personal property and program firefighter property programs. That doesn't read right. Yeah.
It's
Take
the
the
first
period of
program
5
out.
years, subject to review and approval by the city attorney.
Which he's already done.
Has already been done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can take that off. So
Yeah.
It's been moved by Counselor Goebel, seconded by Counselor Kaplan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. And
Cynthia, I have a question. For Rob.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor.
Can you try to get a M1 Abrams tank and then convert the cannon into a water hose?
Cannon. If I could find a way to get away with that, yes, absolutely, Mr. Mayor, I would do that. There actually was developed, it was the Soviets, but they actually did develop a fire tank. Really, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, it was used to put out oil well fires.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
All right.
And if
on
any
to-
counselor wants a ride, one of them, just, yeah, there you go, let us know. It's
Okay,
pretty
fun.
fun. Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
I never
You're
owned
welcome.
a red card, so we'll be
Yeah.
good to go.
Okay, on to 7C, please. Eric?
Report on implementation on Final Order 2021-4 regarding restricted access to the Big Creek reservoirs during evening hours.
Spencer?
November 15th of last year, the City Council adopted an Order 2021-4, which restricts the use of the water, or Big Creek watershed between dusk and dawn. We put initially a farm-type gate in place. That lasted less than a week, I think. And as a result, we haven't tried to control the access to the reservoir until now. We've got a new steel gate that's been installed. And one of the things that we are changing too, because there was a lot of questions about when is dawn and when is dusk. So we're using seasonal times, and that's the way it's going to be posted. So from October through April, during the shorter days, the facility will be closed from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and then May through September we'll be keep it open till 9 p.m. at night. So again, this is an informational item. No action is required. Dave Powell's here to answer any questions council may have with us.
Counselor Goebel?
So Spencer, this gate you put in, it says this gate was damaged to the point where it became operable. What was it before it became operable?
It was inoperable, and then they hit it enough, then we could use it for a while. And
so if we put a gate up and they bang it to the point of operation,
yeah,
it's
apparently,
okay?
yeah, apparently that's what I inadvertently said. So
Is that it?
That's it. I just wanted to arrest him a little bit.
Yes, okay.
I agree with the time. It's very important, to have a set time. I remember when we tried to figure out time, and I remember I thought that was a good idea to have that set time instead of having for me it was kind of what? Sometimes it changes, it's kind of hard to figure out.
It's easier to manage when it's a set time.
Put one of those air tags on it in case somebody takes it.
Okay, are we going to put this one
This one doesn't
to
need
bed?
any action.
Okay. 7D, Eric, please.
7D is a report on RFP development for the Climate Action Plan.
Spencer?
in the current fiscal year, we appropriated $50,000 to develop a climate action plan for the city of Newport. On September 6th, a work session was held to talk about the best way of completing this plan. It was noted at the work session that communities have spent as much as $300,000 in developing climate action plans that are very community engaged, taking actions to reduce their carbon footprint and establishing specific goals going forward. At that meeting, there was discussion that perhaps the best use of our funding would be to really develop a more specific City of Newport organizational plan for how we can reduce our carbon footprint as a city organization. And so that was a concept that was discussed at that particular time. And so we wanted to, Eric has developed a report kind of summarizing a number of the goals and what's happened with those goals currently. We also wanted to see what direction the council would like us to go here as far as how to proceed with this initiative that was raised by the council in goal setting. And so again, if we are looking at something that's more organizationally focused, I think certainly the amount of money should be sufficient to get a meaningful plan together for very specific steps we can take going forward as an organization, working with our staff to identify those options and those things that are practical for us to explore. Otherwise, we could do more of a community-based plan if that's, again, the direction that the council would want to go into, again, with the amount of money. The amount of engagement from the community would be a little limited, but those are kind of the two options that are there for the council to discuss, and there may be other options council wants to suggest as well. The other thing too, Councilor Parker, and we included an email from him on the when he was suggesting using environmentally sensitive oils and materials, for our maintenance activity, and that was something that he had suggested back when we had a discussion prior to COVID on this whole issue. So again, at this point, looking for some direction from the council on what direction you want us to go.
Discussion? Councillor Kaplan?
First off, I really appreciate this work, Eric. It's thorough and it's close to a plan. I think with a little bit of work, this is a plan. It and gives us and tells us where we are in our plan, and with some pictures and stuff like that, it would be really good. So my feeling is, and I may be in the minority, but I'll just say it. I think we need to use, the council needs to be a bully pulpit for this community and take leadership in the city, and that I would hope that we'd spend most of that $50,000 on working to educate, engage, and motivate citizens what they can do. One, that to engage people around that there's a problem, engage people around what are the specific things, what you can do, how do you conserve water, how do you conserve energy. That's not what was intended. I wasn't here when the original was passed, so I'm not responsible. But that would be my feeling. I think there's lots of ways it could be used, but I think that I don't hear every day that we need to do something. We need to do something, and I think we need to be, to get citizens involved and to feel like they're part of something. I think the city could play that role. And at the same time, using what we've already done and what we've already prioritized and articulated, that's a good beginning plan. So saith I.
Councillor Parker Hall.
Yeah, I'd just like to see what Eric put together blended with what I sent in. And some of those suggestions I made in my little blurb in there co-align with some of these other goals, but also we kind of need to also make it easier for people to embrace the concept of low carbon lifestyles as much as we can in a small rural town, making availability of in the charging program and things like that are pretty much available in the valley, and just to make that a thing here. So I kind of included some stuff that I thought was in progress and stuff that has already been done, and then stuff that we really need a regional coalition for, and maybe we can have a section for that too. Because climate policy in a state that's very preemptive needs to be done on a statewide scale, and any environmental protections as well need to be done on a state scale to get the best result for everyone. Hopefully the legislature will have some courage on those types of things this winter. But failing that, we can at least look to other cities in Lincoln County and the Board of Commissioners possibly to partner with on some. The water conservation thing, definitely, we need to work on that with our industrial users and commercial users. Every hotel room I've stayed in the last year has a running toilet, and it just runs all night. And I've stayed in hundreds of those rooms around the country, and that adds up to millions and millions and millions of gallons of waste every year, which is monetized in a hotel setting. And so they stand to, if they can embrace programs with our local utility to not only reduce their own water heating costs, but our supply is so limited, and that's one of my concerns. And so matching the industrial use to the limited supply and making inroads there, I think that amount of staff time matters just as much as a public meeting, because if we get a deliverable result of less water used, a business saves money. So I think those could be part of it as well.
Okay. Counselor Hall?
I was just thinking, is there, we have begun to ask different departments to review the Vision 2040 plan and align their goals for the budget to the Vision 2040 goals. So could we ask each department to devise, like, what was the thing I wrote? What did I just write? I forgot what I wrote. Come on. Oh my gosh, it went away. To review, audit, and adopt 2 to 3 climate-oriented actions that are budget-related. Like, this goes back to the thing about the oils that, Ryan was mentioning or something. Like, are there things internally that could be adopted? And the climate action plan does lay out a lot. And they're also doing an environmental candidates forum on Tuesday, the whatever date, the 18th, I think it is, at 7 p.m., that group. So I feel like there's some way to maybe think about it in a budget aspect of this. Like, if we're really wanting to see these changes, maybe it's reviewing the budgets and where we are spending money and looking at some climate-oriented actions that we could adopt
And we
department by
could do a
department.
follow-up after those said people get elected to make sure they follow through on what they're gonna say. So it's always been the missing piece.
I just want to start for asking for less paper, please. We get a lot of paper, so I think we can start from that. We don't need, we have our laptops, so, computers. I think it will be good to have just, our electronics. I know there's some things that come late, but if those can be scanned, and sent to us, will be okay.
Yeah, and we do have a mixed opinion on printed agendas, so we've had folks on the council want printed agendas to help them get through
Some
the
people
council
do.
meeting. So there's a difference there, but if you let Eric know, if you don't want any printed agendas, we will not do that. And if you want a printed agenda, we can reduce our paper for those that find it not useful for them.
Hey, Spencer, I
That'll be
had
great.
emailed you a 3-page document that I made of in process and that I was referencing earlier, but it's not attached
Okay.
here. I sent it to you directly.
Well, that was
So
probably,
could you send that
yeah,
out?
we can send that
Yeah,
out,
I
so.
know, tomorrow, or whatever.
So one of the alternatives here is to draft an RFP for the purposes of obtaining a consultant to conduct an analysis and create a sustainability plan. How do we feel about going that direction?
Well, I think we've heard several suggestions, which makes it confusing for us as far as what we're supposed to actually do. But, because Jan was suggesting focusing more on public education.
Who, and who would actually do the public education?
We would have to develop materials that would, we would probably use a consultant to do that. That's different than developing kind of a plan for the city.
Okay.
Which is another idea that's come out, which is more specific things about, what specific steps can we be taking going forward to reduce our carbon footprint. And then the other option is doing, and I think, I get the impression we've kind of walked away from doing a more comprehensive climate action plan, community-based input, because of the 50,000 probably would not get as much along
I
those
thought we
lines.
were going to do more of a study as to what the city can do.
Right.
Climate action plan.
So anyway, we've got the public education, and then we've got kind of a very specific look at what we can do as an organization ourselves to reduce our energy use.
I'd like to see a list of action items the city can do, and then like an annual update of what has been done. We don't need to spend the money on a consultant for that. Now, I would like to see if there's money to partner, maybe with the county or something, to do a regional update to their 2019 plan if they're amenable. Because their 2019 plan has a lot of outdated stuff in it already because the technology and, implementation of green energy stuff has changed already.
Right.
So I'd like to see both. The list that Eric made, I think we could attack a lot of those things on that list.
Yeah, it's a good list. Good.
But my list is good too. You'll have to take a look at that one as well.
I did see your list. I know,
And I understand the list too is basically, you know, we haven't vetted that list at all as an organization yet either, but it was kind of ideas that were in the mix, and kind of ideas of things we could focus on that would be in place. And so, again, you know, the one challenge we always have, you know, particularly during this time is, you know, it's easy to say we can do these things internally, but we don't have, you know, we're trying to.
I know, yeah.
Trying to replace Peggy with Eric.
We could have a work session with a blended list of all these things we've talked about tonight, and then we start to score prioritization of what is realistic to do.
If that's the scope of what we want to do, and not utilize the 50,000, or utilize the 50,000 for actually implementing some things, that's another option. So, but that would be a change from what was mentioned before, and it's departure from what Councilor Kaplan's discussed.
Maybe it's the hour, or maybe I'm just a little fuzzy on how we're going forward with these exactly, but I like the list.
The longest meeting here.
Yeah, right, okay.
But
So
I know that one.
CM's got good control over that, so.
So, Councilor Kaplan?
Again, I would propose, I think that Eric's list and with Ryan's got some of the missing gaps because he was here, that those could be joined and into, you know, or one amends the other, but that we'd come up with a pretty comprehensive plan around things that we can do, and then and track those that we can, and here's a list of things we can do, and here's some things that we actually will do in the next 6 months. Because you can't plan to do it all. Right. But I think, I also thought that some of Ryan's ideas and my ideas about engaging the public, because if we just try to get public input, that's all you get. We need to be engaging, rah-rahing, hiring a consultant, cheerleader, facilitator, somebody who can get a community excited about it, and then talk about the kind of content. But I feel that, and I might not, maybe that's just my thing, I don't know. But I think it's a role the city can play, and using things like, you know, we can set up charging stations. Can we get a bunch of LEDs and hand them out if you come to our events? Can we do things that are practical for people that would bring them to stuff, and then talk about, so, you know.
I think what we can do in the interim is we'll consolidate the list that Ryan put together. What's that?
Consolidate the list in person.
Right, but the other thing is organizationally, we haven't vetted any of this, so that would be kind of the next step, is have our departments weigh into these and add other items. Right, and then I think what we'll do is we'll bring that back to the council sometime before the end of the calendar year here, and then we can take a look at that and then discuss kind of what the next steps are.
Mayor Sawyer, we don't want to leave you out. Any thoughts?
I think he's asleep.
He's frozen. Sorry, Dean.
He's frozen.
We miss you, Dean.
I don't think he is. Yeah, he can't hear us.
Okay, well, so are we ready to go on?
Yes, I think so.
It's on the next one, yeah.
Okay, all right, we will go on to 8. Eric, please.
Number 8 is the Local Contract Review Board, authorization of a purchase order in the amount of $54,358.18 with Motion Industries to purchase and install 2 aerator shafts and couplers at the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, Spencer?
Yeah, this is work that was discovered. Need to open the.
I have to open it, yeah.
Review Board.
So close the city council? No, just open.
Yep.
Just open the contractor review board.
Okay.
Close the meeting.
Tempting. It's tempting.
Anyway, we had summer work that was done at the wastewater treatment plant regarding the replacement of various aeration basin equipment. During that period of time, we discovered that 2 of the aerator shafts are damaged and not repairable, and both shafts need to be replaced. The recommendation is to purchase the shafts from Motion Industries for an amount of $54,358.18. So that would be the recommendation.
Okay, let's get these.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
When David and Grant ask for something, it's because we better replace it or we're going to be in, don't want to
Okay.
be hand sifting our sewage.
Okay, go for it.
I move to authorize a purchase order in the amount of $54,358.18 with Motion Industries to purchase and install 2 aerator shafts and couplers at the wastewater treatment plant.
Second.
Motion is made by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Kaplan. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. 8B, please.
8B is approval of a purchase of a pump for the influent pump station from Xylem Water Solutions USA, Inc. in the amount of $136,178.21.
Spencer?
The city's largest wastewater pump station is located in South Beach at the bottom of the hill that pumps all the wastewater up to the plant. And pump number 4 has failed after 18 years of service and must be replaced in order to have the reliable backup for this facility. So the recommendation is to purchase that pump from Xylem Water Solutions in the amount of $136,178.21.
How long does it take to get this piece of equipment? Was it unanticipated?
It's, I think it's more than 18 weeks. Over 18 weeks.
How long again?
Over 18 weeks.
Oh.
Yeah.
18 weeks to get it?
What's that? Pardon me?
Lead time's 18 weeks? Yeah, okay, that's not bad, really.
It's
I think a lot of
9 weeks each way to drive to Xylem.
better order it pretty soon because everything's heading to Florida and Cuba and Costa Rica, yeah.
No, we've had our eye on this pump for a while. This has actually been in process for a couple of years. This pump failed 2 years ago. It's $136,000, so we had money in the budget last year, wasn't enough, so we carried it over into this year. And this was justified through a sole source memo created by Grant last year, and that's how we got it into the budget for this year, and it was approved through that process.
Does this come out of the water sewer fund?
Out of the wastewater fund.
Okay, Counselor Hall?
Can I ask if it's already appropriated and this amount is less than that, it's because it's still over 50,000 that we have to, even though we've already, okay, I just wanted to clarify, thanks.
Yeah, appropriation and purchasing is 2 totally separate operations, so.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I'll move to authorize the purchase order in the amount of $136,178.21 for the purchase of a Flight NT3231 pump for the influent pump station from Xylem Water Solutions USA, Inc.
Second.
Okay. Been a motion made by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Boteo. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. And I believe I can close the contract review board. I close the contract review board.
Good job.
Let's see, we have the council report, but are there any public comments out there in the audience? Nope? Okay, all right.
I would like to be excused from the next city council meeting on October 17th. I'll be on the East Coast.
Okay.
I move to excuse the Honorable Jan Kaplan from the October 17th meeting.
Second.
It's been moved by Counselor Hall, seconded by Counselor Goebel. moved by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Goebel to excuse Jan Kaplan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Hearing none,
No
motion
excuse
carries.
for Jan Kaplan.
Okay.
The Honorable Jan Kaplan.
Beatrice?
Yes, I would like to be excused on the 17th, and that'll be work session only. I'm gonna be for the 6th. I have to work.
Yeah, we should move it to the,
Yeah, go ahead and move it.
All right, I excuse Beatrice from the October 17th work session.
second.
Been moved by Counselor Parker, seconded by Counselor Goebel. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Any other business? Yes, Counselor Hall?
So
You aren't gone on the 17th, are you?
actually, I was going to tell you, if you haven't already registered for the League of Oregon Cities Homelessness Workshop, it's going to be here at Best Western Agate Beach that day, 10:30 to 3 on the Monday, the 17th. I am not excusing Counselor Boteo or Counselor Kaplan from that. I fully expect to see you there, even though you won't be able to be. No,
Depends what you have for breakfast.
I
never
don't
know,
know
you
what they're
might
doing.
see
But the other thing I was gonna say, I already mentioned the environmental forum. The other thing is, the entire city is going to League of Oregon Cities. Like, who's the acting city manager this
That would be
week?
Derek.
Yep, Derek will be acting
Oh,
manager.
good, okay. And,
I'm back up.
okay,
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, way back.
way in the back.
I'm around. I'm just.
So Peggy's a non-entity now, or is that the deal?
No, Peggy's
Peggy's
gonna be with
coming.
us.
But I was
Oh,
just
she's coming
thinking,
too?
We're all in Bend, so Peggy, Eric, myself, and the entire
Oh, my
council.
God.
just want to know who the designated survivor is.
Yeah.
But I thought because we're all going to be there, we should definitely get some photos. And there's the banquet on Thursday night, and we'll dress fancy, right? So, or maybe fancy for Newport, fancy. But I just thought we should get some group photos because we don't have any, I don't think, with all of us. So that might be a nice opportunity. That was all I just wanted to say about that. Yes, I will, if Spencer will. We're finding a moment. Heck yes.
Just one quick thing.
Love is a battlefield.
Today was the second meeting of the Yaquina Bay Estuary Management Plan Update Advisory Group. They were just going through some old outdated stuff from the 1982 plan, like raw log storage in the middle of Yaquina Bay is no longer a necessary portion of the plan. It's going well. It's a consultant and PSU and the U of O are involved. It's supposed to wrap up in January of '24. So that's what I was doing this morning.
So I just have one thing that, I think Spencer already mentioned it, the short-term rental committee has disbanded now. We had our last meeting, and it's no longer around. The council had a sunset clause in the committee, and we've done our work, and it's working just fine right now.
That report will be coming, the closeout report and recommendations from the group will be coming to the council. I can't remember, it's either the next or maybe in a month from now. It'll be on an agenda, so.
Right. We did it. Dean, yes.
Okay, I just want to say that if you remember, I talked earlier about the long road, the two gentlemen that are walking here, the veterans that are walking here from Boston on Highway 20. We've had a lot of talks with several different groups in town, and everybody is super excited. Everybody wants to join in. The National Guard, the American Legion, the Newport Police, the Newport Fire. We've even had people from Lincoln City say they want to come down. I think we're going to have a great celebration. We're going to have a meeting later this month with several people to try to figure out what we're going to do. I think we're going to probably have a Loyalty Days parade that day. There's going to be a lot of people here. It's going to be a great event. The other thing I'd like to say is I prepared an email to send to the mayor of Washington, D.C. I'm suggesting that they don't have a soccer match and a baseball game on the same day across the street from our hotel. That was kind of a problem for me. I don't think any of us have seen a traffic jam like that in years. The other thing is when you come here, I'm at the River House, just for those of you who don't know, but the fireplaces here do not have any wood. So if you want to have your own fire here in the room, you got to bring your own firewood. And the second thing is they give us Oregon Rain, a bottled water, and on the back it says Oregon Rain is made from virgin water. I have no idea what that means. You know, maybe we could have Steve Stewart produce some virgin water from the city.
We can start our own business. We can start our own business.
Yeah.
We'll see you in Bend.
Okay, drive safe, everybody.